Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Grand Champion Tournament here on the D-Pad. I'm Rick, where we are putting this video up a little later than I meant to. I've been trying so hard to find time to get this one recorded, but I have a work trip that's coming up, and I have been very busy preparing for that. The next one of these you see, part of it's going to be recorded in another country, so be ready for that. But so to give you a sort of table of contents for this video, because it's a long video. People may not necessarily be thrilled about the length of it and trying to figure out where stuff is. So first we're going to walk through the results of the second heat of round one. Then I'm going to tell you the standings of those who have put in their predictions for the overall tournament. And then we're going to get into the actual matchups for heat three. If you're watching this and you have not put your prediction in yet, you have until Heat 3 descriptions begin in this video in order to put your predictions in. So you still have at least some amount of time. But as soon as I talk about the first matchup of Heat 3, it is open for voting and predictions are closed. And in fact, if you are interested in voting in this, you can head to challenge.com/grand_champion_2. It's the third heat. There's two heats to a bracket right now. Grand Champion 2, you can vote as we discuss the games. In the meantime, if you still want to put your predictions in, if you want a shot at the grand prize or second, third, or fourth place, you can go to grand_champion_2 and put your predictions in, but you only have until we finish talking about the matches from the last heat and our current scores. So, with that said, let's talk about Heat 2. And in fact, before we can talk about Heat 2, we got to go back to Heat 1. And the reason for that is there were three ties at the end of voting for Heat 1. And let's go take a look at them. So there were three of them. The first one that was up was Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire Special Demo Version versus Mr. Bones. Which Mr. Bones won with 58% of the vote after the tiebreaker period. So Mr. Bones will be going up against Mega Man 4 in the second round. Our second tie match was Shadowgate versus Heretic Shadow of the Serpent Riders, I think it's plural. And those are actually still tied as of the end of the last voting period. So that one will still stay open until the end of Heat 3. You can still vote on this at challenge.com/grand_champion_1. It is the only match from round one that is still in the running. We're going to keep bringing this thing back until it either breaks the tie or until we are about to start round two, in which case it will be randomly decided which one wins. And the third tie match was Super Smash Bros. For Wii U versus Evoland 2, with Smash for Wii U winning, and that will be going up against Mega Man 3 during the second round. So both of our surviving tie-broken ones going up against NES Mega Man games. That's kind of interesting. But let's talk about our second heat, our matchups that we had in the second heat of round one. First up, we had Sonic CD versus Worldwide Soccer Sega International Victory Goal Edition. It's a long name. Sonic CD sweeping that one 100%. Following that, we had Pokemon Yellow version Special Pikachu Edition versus Street Fighter the movie, the game. Pokemon Yellow also winning with 100% of the vote. So Sonic CD versus Pokemon Yellow will be going up against each other in round two. Next up, we have Pokemon Leaf Green version versus Elden Ring Night Rain, with Pokemon Leaf Green winning with 67% of the vote. So that is moving on. That seems like a pretty reasonable one. The Nuzlocke seem like they're likely to be at least getting through one or two rounds. We also have Mega Man Battle Network. What is the number on this? 1 versus Sonic Roboblast 2 Kart, with Battle Network 1 winning with 92% of the vote. Also not super surprised about this one. So Pokemon Leaf Green will face off against Battle Network 1 in round 2. Following that, we have Minimon versus Heavy Rain, with Heavy Rain winning with 75% of the vote. Not too surprised there. I am not expecting the 12 Games of Christmas to do amazingly well. Meanwhile, Heavy Rain has at least been a funny experience so far. We also have Mega Man Battle Network WS, the Wonder Swan version, up against Star Fox Zero, with Battle Network WS winning with 83% of the vote. So Heavy Rain will go up against Battle Network WS in round 2. That makes sense to me. That was also, a pretty different experience there. Next, we have Towerfall versus Deus Ex: The Conspiracy. Towerfall winning with 58% of the vote. I believe there's a pretty good chance it's the only survivor from the 12 Games of Christmas. And really, I think with how buggy the video wound up being for Deus Ex, that's not too surprising. Following that, we have Mega Man 5 for Game Boy versus Rabbids Land, with Mega Man 5 winning with 92% of the vote. So Towerfall versus Mega Man 5 will be in round 2. We have the original Legend of Zelda for the NES versus Inscription. Zelda 1 winning with 92% of the vote. I think that was a pretty easy one to guess. Zelda 1 is a pretty formative period in the channel's life. The match following that is Kingdom Hearts Final Mix versus Fortune Street, with Kingdom Hearts winning with 58% of the vote. That also makes a lot of sense to me. The Kingdom Hearts series has been a pretty interesting one so far in terms of the videos for most of them. So Zelda 1 versus Kingdom Hearts 1 in round 2. After that, we have Trilby's Notes versus Robotica. Trilby's Notes winning with 58% of the votes. That was a pretty close one, but Trilby's Notes was a fairly memorable Let's Play, so that's a pretty expectable outcome there. After that, we have Mega Man 5 versus Sing Party, 5 for the NES this time, with Mega Man 5 winning with 92% of the vote. Pretty much blew that one out of the water. Pretty expectable. Sing Party was kind of a weird one. So Trilby's Notes versus Mega Man 5 in the second round. After that, we have Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link versus Shinobi Legions. Zelda 2 winning with 92% of the vote. That was one that CJ and I did about half of that by ourselves because John had to leave for a trip in the middle of the Let's Play. It was a fun one there. We have Mega Man for Game Gear versus Mario Kart Double Dash. Mega Man for Game Gear winning with 58% of the vote. I figured it would actually do a little bit better than this, but it was definitely the one that I figured was going to win in the end. So round 2, we're going to have Zelda 2 versus Mega Man for Game Gear. The next pair of matchups, we have You Are the God of Squares versus Pokemon Showdown. Pokemon Showdown winning with 58% of the vote. Not terribly surprised about that. You Are the God of Squares was kind of a weird little solo single, video thing. Not that Showdown wasn't also a single video, but it at least had a little bit more going on there. We also have Wily Lights Rockboard, that's Paradise, versus Mario and Sonic at the Sochi 2014 Olympic Winter Games. I believe that's with Rockboard winning with 75% of the vote. Again, not too surprising to me. I think that one was a pretty memorable one, for better or for worse. So Pokemon Showdown versus Wily and Light's Rockboard in round 2. We have, after that, 5 Days a Stranger versus Hang On GP. 5 Days a Stranger winning with 91% of the vote. Pretty much ran away with that one. Also one of our earliest Let's Plays, and the first one that went up on YouTube. And we covered it again. 2 great series on that. We also have Quiplash versus Hades. Hades winning with 67% of the vote. That one was very interesting to see, given I was getting through the game so fast that it wasn't really sure what to do with the story anymore, so that was fun. So 5 Days a Stranger will go up against Hades in round 2. We also have The Legend of Zelda 4 Swords Adventures versus Ire, a Prologue. This one I was a little bit surprised by, but 4 Swords Adventures won with 100% of the vote. I thought Ire would do a little bit better than that because that was a pretty interesting video that we wound up with, but 4 Swords Adventures was also a pretty memorable one in its own right, especially given the weird setup that we had in order to capture one of the Game Boy Advance type screens there. After that, we have Quake versus Pokemon Blue version, with Pokemon Blue winning with 83% of the vote. Not terribly surprised on that one. It's what we've been using for Pokemon the very best. And hard to get a more unique experience on the channel than that. So 4 Swords Adventures versus Pokemon Blue in round 2. After that, we have Clark versus 999, 9 hours, 9 persons, 9 doors, with 999 winning with 75% of the vote. If anything, I'm surprised it didn't do better, but it will be moving on to the next round. We also have Back to the Future Part 3 versus the Link's Awakening DX Randomizer, with Link's Awakening winning with 92% of the vote. That seemed like kind of a no-brainer there. 999 will be going up against Link's Awakening DX Randomizer in round 2. We have, following that, Pokemon X versus Clockwork Knight, the first Clockwork Knight, with Pokemon X winning with 92% of the vote. Again, not too surprised. I feel like the Nuzlocke and Padlocks are going to be pretty strong contenders throughout this tournament. And I suspect that Clockwork Knight 2 might do a little bit better. If we haven't, actually don't remember if it's already gone through by this point. The match after that being Turok Dinosaur Hunter versus Game & Wario, with Turok Dinosaur Hunter getting 58% of the vote. And in fact, so Turok moving on and going up against Pokemon X, there's a non-zero chance that by the time round 2 happens, we will have some Turok videos going up in the channel. So it's actually going to have a little bit better of a shot by the time we get around to its next matchup. Speaking of, our next matchup is Sonic Generations versus Gun Griffin. Sonic Generations winning with 100% of the vote, a clean sweep, no surprises there. Mega Man X3 versus Sonic Superstars, a battle of 2 games that were very awkward for us to play. Mega Man X3 winning with 75% of the vote. I think that's probably a pretty fair outcome there. Superstars was a little bit more general, not complaining, but a little bit more general chaos, where X3, we had a little bit more commentary going with that. So Sonic Generations versus Mega Man X3 in the second round. After that, we have BS The Legend of Zelda versus Saturn Bomberman, with BS Zelda winning with 83% of the vote. Again, not too surprising there. I think a lot of the console plays, I suspect, are probably not going to be amazingly strong contenders because they're just one-off episodes by and large. There will be a few that slip through for sure, but I think that most of them are probably only going to make their one showing and then be done. After that, we have Bloodborne versus Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, with Bloodborne winning with 58% of the vote. Yeah, that makes sense to me. If anything, I'm a little surprised Bloodborne didn't do better, but that was definitely a pair of very interesting, videos we wound up with there. But BS The Legend of Zelda versus Bloodborne in the next round. After that, we have It'll Do versus NFL 97. It'll Do winning with 83% of the vote. Honestly surprised it didn't clean sweep, but it will be moving on to the next one. We also have Five Nights at Freddy's versus Eternal Darkness Sanity's Requiem, with Eternal Darkness also winning with 83% of the vote. So we'll have It'll Do versus Eternal Darkness in the next round. Again, I'm almost a little more surprised Eternal Darkness didn't do better, but I suppose Five Nights 1 was a very interesting experiment on the channel as well. So, that one did, okay here. Could have done a lot worse. After that, we have Mario Kart 8 versus Metroid Prime 2 Echoes, with Mario Kart 8 winning with 58% of the vote. I think that's a pretty fair estimate at the end of the day, especially Mario Kart 8 had a few memorable moments in its very short runtime on the channel, so that's a fun one to have there. We also have Mega Man X versus Wii Sports Club, a game that I think... Oh, no, sorry, that's Wii Sports Resort. I'm like, which one just got a sequel? Mega Man X winning with 92% of the vote. Not a surprise there at all. That one was always going to be a pretty heavy hitter, at least in the early stages. So Mario Kart 8 versus Mega Man X. We also have Sonic the Hedgehog 2 for the Sega Genesis versus Magic Knight Ray Earth, and Sonic 2 winning with 92% of the vote. That seemed like a pretty easy one there. Similarly, Mega Man X4 versus Iron and Blood Warriors of Ravenloft, with Mega Man X4 winning with 92% of the vote there as well. So we're going to have Sonic 2 versus Mega Man X4 up against each other in round 2. Sorry, I got super distracted by the boiler kicking in. We have Pokemon Alpha Sapphire versus Hexen Beyond Heretic. Alpha Sapphire with a clean sweep on that one. I thought it'd be a little bit less than 100%, but Alpha Sapphire getting the full clean victory there. We also have Mega Man 2 for the NES versus Donkey Kong Bonanza, with Mega Man 2 winning with 83% of the vote. it's Mega Man 2. I mean, it's going to be a tough one to beat in most circumstances anyway. And it's a complete Let's Play, whereas Donkey Kong Bonanza is still in progress. So Pokemon Alpha Sapphire versus Mega Man 2 in the next round. After that, we have A Ride into the Mountains versus Quest 64. Quest 64 winning with 75% of the vote. Might have been for its own mimetic status above all else, but it is advancing to the next stage. We also have Mega Man Network Transmission versus Super Mario 64 Co-op Deluxe, with Network Transmission winning with 67% of the vote. If anything, I would have thought it would do more than that, but it is still moving on. So we have Quest 64 versus Mega Man Network Transmission in the next round. After that, we have The Legend of Zelda Oracle of Seasons versus Mr. Bucket. Oracle of Seasons winning with 67% of the vote. Sadly, our one toy in the mix will not be moving on. Following that, we have Onwiji versus Pokemon Rumble U. I'm genuinely surprised that Rumble U won this one, but it did with 58% of the vote. So it'll be Oracle of Seasons versus Pokemon Rumble U in the second round. We also have Super Mario Kart versus Shining Wisdom. Super Mario Kart winning with 75% of the vote, which kind of makes sense. We've had a couple like interesting uses of Super Mario Kart, in its time on the channel. Shining Wisdom just getting the one video. And then following that, we have Gods Will Be Watching versus The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. And as predicted, Gods Will Be Watching moves on to the next round. I think it has a real chance of being an increasingly heavy hitter as time goes on. But either way, Super Mario Kart versus Gods Will Be Watching in the next round. After that, we have The Legend of Zelda Spirit Tracks versus Metroid Prime Remastered. Spirit Tracks winning with 58% of the vote. Alongside, I think the franchise play is generally performing well. I think the streams are generally going to underperform, and that makes perfect sense with how we wound up here. Not that I think Metroid Prime is like my finest hour in streaming at all, nor do I think Spirit Tracks was either, but I think Spirit Tracks makes sense as getting through to the next round. If anything, I'm surprised it didn't do even better, actually. On the flip side of things, we have Mega Man Battle Network 2 versus Family Party 30 Great Games Obstacle Arcade. Battle Network 2 winning with 92% of the vote. No surprise there. Family Party 30 Great Games, yada yada, was not even necessarily an entertainingly bad game. It was just a bad game. So Spirit Tracks versus Battle Network 2 in the next round. Following that, we have The Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker HD versus Clover Pit, with Wind Waker winning with 83% of the vote. I thought it might have been a little bit closer together, but Wind Waker was definitely, I think, among the stronger Zelda titles we had in the original Legendary Let's Play, so getting out with 83% definitely makes sense. We also have Five Nights at Freddy's 2 versus Super Mario Party Jamboree, with Mario Party Jamboree actually advancing to the next round with 67% of the vote. The Jamboree games have been quite good so far. I don't know how long it's going to last in the tournament, because they do, I think from a viewer standpoint, perhaps get a little bit samey after all. They're fun as hell to play, and maybe the weird comebacks and things are going to wind up helping here. But, yeah, we're going to have the Wind Waker HD versus Super Mario Party Jamboree in round 2. The next match we have is 7 Days a Skeptic versus Mystaria, The Realms of Lore, a.k.a. Blazing Heroes. 7 Days a Skeptic winning with 92% of the vote. Makes perfect sense. Again, a game that we did in full versus a one-off. The console plays are going to struggle throughout this tournament, I think. And we also have Toe Jam and Earl versus Wii Party U. Speaking of another console play, Toe Jam and Earl winds up winning with 92% as well. So we're going to get 7 Days of Skeptic versus the original Toe Jam and Earl in the next round. That should be a very interesting one to see. Following that, we have Knuckles Chaotix versus Cyber Speedway. Knuckles Chaotix winning with 92% of the vote. Again, seems like kind of a no-brainer on that one. We also have Mega Man 2 The Power Fighters versus Star Wars Masters of Terras Kasi, with with the Power Fighters. I just said it out loud. Yeah, the Power Fighters winning with 83% of the vote. Yeah. I don't expect the Mega Man fighting games to last long, but also against like a very short segment of a much larger stream, which being the Masters of Terrascasi, that makes perfect sense. But we're going to have Knuckles Chaotix versus Mega Man 2 The Power Fighters in the second round. After that, we have The Legend of Zelda The Minish Cap versus Spookware, and the Minish Cap wins with 100% of the vote. I was actually expecting Spookware not to win necessarily, but at least to do a little bit better than that. But that's the way it goes sometimes. And on the flip side of things, we have The Legend of Zelda. If my thing wants to, there we go. The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask 3D versus Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour. Majora's Mask 3D winning with 100% of the votes. I don't think there's any surprise there. The Welcome Tour video was kind of a mess. Some of it was our fault. Most of it was just, it's just hard to do a good recording of anything that features changing frame rates or activating HDR or stuff. Like, that's just a very tricky bar to clear in general on the video side. But either way, that means we have, for round 2, The Legend of Zelda The Minish Cap versus Majora's Mask 3D. We can have a head-to-head Zelda match next time we come around to this. We have Goose versus Adventure. Adventure winning with 58% of the vote. Makes pretty decent sense to me. I feel like again, with Goose being part of one of the, I think, Sega Genesis Mini 2, that was, unlikely to do amazing there. Not that Adventure is exactly a crazy thing, but there was some interesting stuff with Peter and I trying to navigate that game. We also have Back to the Future Part 2. Okay, just making sure it wasn't Part 2 and 3. Versus Metal Slug Anthology. Metal Slug Anthology winning that with 92% of the vote. So we're going to have Adventure versus Metal Slug Anthology in round 2. Not a lot to say there. We then have Pokemon Diamond version versus Pokemon Coliseum. Diamond version winning with 92% of the vote. So we have one of our CJ and Felice versus the Elite Four matchups moving on to the next round. I think that makes pretty good sense. The Coliseum video was fun, but it was maybe not the most memorable of videos for us. So I think the Diamond version run was a fun time. We also have Mega Man Soccer versus Paper Mario Color Splash, with Mega Man Soccer winning with 67% of the vote. If anything, it should have run away with it even more. That was a very weird series, but it was a lot of fun to put together. So we have Pokemon Diamond versus Mega Man Soccer in the second round. After that, we have The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword versus Dungeons and Degenerate Gamblers. Skyward Sword winning with 100% of the vote, a clean sweep. Not too surprised about that, especially for a game that we covered once in full and once as kind of a false start out of Skyward Sword there. We also have Mega Man The Power Battle versus Rabbit and Steel. Mega Man The Power Battle winning with 83% of the vote. Yeah, I kind of figured that this one would go that way. I figured that it would be a little bit closer together. But either way, Power Battle moves on. So we're going to have Skyward Sword versus the Power Battle in the second round. After that, we have Super Smash Bros. For Nintendo 3DS versus Blackfire. Smash for 3DS winning with 83% of the vote. No big surprises there. We also have Mega Man 2 for Game Boy versus Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, with Mega Man 2 for Game Boy winning with 75% of the vote. Again, not surprised there. I think the ending of that Let's Play alone is plenty to secure a first-round victory there. We'll see how it does in round 2. We're going to have Smash for 3DS versus Mega Man 2 for Game Boy. But, I think it'll be interesting to see how those two go up against each other. We also have The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, the original, versus Scud the Disposable Assassin. And the original Majora's Mask wins with 92% of the vote. Once again, not very surprising how that one turned out. In the match after that, we have The Legend... Whoa, I clicked on something by accident. The Legend of Zelda Four Swords versus Mushihime-sama, and Four Swords wins with 92% of the vote, which means that we have another head-to-head Zelda matchup of Majora's Mask versus Four Swords in the second round. We also have The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening DX, which would be CJ's speed run as well as mine, up against F1 Challenge. Link's Awakening DX winning with 100% of the vote. Clean sweep. And similarly, our final match of Heat 2, Pokemon Insurgents versus ESPN Sports Connector. Pokemon Insurgents sweeping with 100% of the vote, which means Link's Awakening DX up against Pokemon Insurgents in the second round. So that means that out of the 67 matchups we were looking to wrap up here, we've got 66 of them. So we have already now eliminated 127 games from this tournament. We now have, I believe, what would that be, 897 left to go. We're getting there. We're doing pretty well so far. So let's take a second and we can hop over to our results table. Did you know Google Sheets on desktop doesn't have a built-in dark mode? So this is going to look pretty good until we get back to not having a big white thing in front of me. But let's take a look at the scores so far. This time I'm actually going to go from the bottom up for, the sake of drama, because that's a lot more interesting than starting from the top and working our way down. So our updated scores so far. So at the bottom in number 17 right now, we have Spoiler Goblin, who has dropped down from 16th. Not a huge drop there, with 93 points, potential score of 378 a potential score of 1900. 378 is for this specific bracket. So that's kind of our baseline for this one. Just above that, we have Zim with 96 points and a potential of 1911 for those remaining. A little bit of a drop. Zim was in 12th in the last round, so fallen a little bit, but not super far. The next handful here are a bunch of us all falling just a little bit of a slip. The Galax slipping from 14th to the 15th with 98 points, but a potential final of 1963, which is pretty decently in the pack, I think, as we move up here. Nanocarp slipping from 13th to the 14th place with 99 points, but a potential total of 1875. So that one's going to be a tricky one. I think that is the lowest potential total that's left. It's going to be an uphill climb, but it's not impossible, especially if Nano's predictions going forward wind up being solid ones in the other three brackets. Just barely above that is myself, slipping from 11th to 13th place. I'm doing worse. I also have 99 points, but I have a potential total of 1938. Not looking good so far. Not looking super good. I'm not thrilled with how that's looking. But maybe I can hold on. Maybe I can predict it well from here. Jumping up in the rankings from 15th to 12th, we have Siran, who is also at 99 points, but has a potential total of 1944. So that's three of us at 99 points with room to go there. Above that, I think we have tied for the biggest jump in ranking so far in the tournament. We have Joe Body jumping from last place last time to 11th place. A nice big jump with 101 points right now and a potential total of 1930. So a pretty decent jump there. A great job of salvaging this bracket. And of course, there's three other brackets to go. Above that, we have TMNT Fan, who also has 101 points, but a potential total of 1962. We have Pepe, who dropped from 4th to 9th, also with 101 points and a potential of 1968. We also have Hasty, who has dropped from 3rd to 8th, also with 101 points and a potential total of 1978. Above our 101s, we have Panda123, who has slipped from 6th to 7th place, but has a current point total of 106, 1959 left potential to go. We have DJ Glaceon, also with 106, jumping from 9th place to 6th place, who also has 1981 as the possible ceiling for points there. Above that, we have C-Dude slipping just a bit from 4th to 5th, but still tied with the 4th place person at 108 points with 1956 as his ceiling. We have Alxprit, who also had a really good jump this time around, jumping from 10th place to 4th place, also with 108 points, but with 1964 as the ceiling. Above that, we have SD Hero, who jumped from 7th place to 3rd, also with 108 points, but with a max total of 2001. Still has over 2,000 for a possible score, and the only person who has the potential of getting 1,000 picks correct. So that is currently 23, I think? No, 21 incorrect choices so far out of 127, I guess, because the other match there hasn't really been tabulated yet, but that's pretty goddamn good. Above that, we have Viral, who was in first last time, but is in second this time with a score of 111 points and a potential total of 1992. And above that, previously in second place, now in first place, and still needs to put their predictions in for the next bracket. You've got literally like 10 seconds here. Hoyoda, who has 112 points and a potential total of 1943. So that is where our current rankings for those with the predictions has gone so far. We have quite a long way to go. It is still absolutely anyone's game. The lowest potential total is 1875, and that's really not that far behind everybody else here. Very, very achievable for anybody still. I'm very interested to see where more of these go. And I'm curious if anybody kind of like starts to break away at some point, because even the folks at the top are not that far ahead. We've got, SD Hero and Viral have the top kind of ceilings on points, but they're only a handful of points ahead of DJ Glaceon, who's only very few points ahead of Hasty, who's only a few points ahead of Pepe and TMNT Fan and Alksprit. Like it's all very tight still. It is very much anyone's game. But now that we've got that out of the way, let's jump back and take a look at the competitors for Heat 3. Okay. Now, as this part is starting, predictions are now closed for the second bracket, the Chaos Conference. If you are interested, if you want to head to challenge.com/grand_champion_2, then you can pull that up, and I believe you need to make an account in order to vote. But once you do so, you can vote along with the video here as we walk through each of these matches. The layout of like check boxes to vote with are in reverse order for some reason, so you may have to kind of jump to the bottom and work your way back up. I would also recommend if you're feeling certain about the stuff you've got checked after a few votes, submit those, and you can keep submitting new votes for matches you haven't voted for yet, just because if you, for whatever reason, reload the page or whatever, it's going to get rid of what you had as your unsubmitted votes. So, throw stuff in periodically, maybe every row, submit it just for your own sake, just to keep them saved. But getting started, our first match of Heat 3, Pokken Tournament versus BCV Battle Construction Vehicles. Pokken Tournament is a Tekken fighting game with Pokemon, is really the most boiled down version of that. Very cool idea. I think probably quite a bit inspired the battle format for Pokemon Legends ZA and the kind of live, like walking around 3D space type aspects of it. We only did one video of it. I don't really remember why we only did one video of it, but we had a very brief time with it. It was kind of interesting to see how that worked, and it honestly gave us a lot of ideas about ways that Pokemon could kind of evolve the game from there. BCV Battle Construction Vehicles was a game that we played as part of Punch Dave Hook's Money, a very strange game in the mix, because it is literally a fighting game where you fight as construction vehicles. It's exactly what it sounds like. So you can have a backhoe or a crane or, what have you, and fighting and swiveling stuff around and all that. Very strange controls, but it was honestly a hilarious concept. I'm so glad that Dave found this because it's so strange. But Pokken Tournament versus BCV Battle Construction Vehicles. Then after that, we have Mega Man Gold Empire versus Sonic Triple Trouble 16-bit. So Mega Man Gold Empire was one of a pair of Taiwanese Mega Man games. It's unclear to me whether they had a legitimate license for either of these. I think it was Strawberry Soft that did, these ones. I think it was Strawberry Soft that did both. But it was essentially a Monopoly-like board game where you went around and kind of built up things. In some ways, it would actually felt very similar to Rockboard. But you kind of went around. You had like events. Maybe it's a little closer to Fortune Street, but we didn't play for very long, and it was all in Taiwanese. Is Taiwanese a language? Would it just be one of the two Chinese languages at that point? I don't know. But we didn't know we couldn't read any of it, so we were making the best we could. But there were kind of like events you could sort of walk into, and it's a very difficult to describe game. We played it as part of the Mega Let's Play. If you want to check it out, I highly recommend the videos. we didn't do that many, so it'd be very easy to take a look at before our time runs out here. I should clarify also, these are going to run until June 26th. June 26th, voting will close for Heat 3. That's the first 64 matches in this bracket. So at noon Eastern, which for me is going to be in the evening where I'm going to be, I'll still be online. It's actually a day off that I've got in between two trips, but I'll be checking there. On the other side, we have Sonic Triple Trouble 16-bit, which was, I believe, I hope I get his name right, a fan game made by Noah Copeland. I hope I got the name right. I'm going to be so embarrassed if I didn't. Essentially making a 16-bit, so Genesis-style remake of Sonic Triple Trouble, probably most heavily inspired ultimately by Sonic 3 and Knuckles in terms of how to handle the 16-bit nature of it. I got like one hair that's really just... There we go. It was a phenomenal fan game. I had a blast checking that one out. I think we did three episodes that we split it into. I don't even remember if it was a single stream or not. It probably was. But it was a great time. Really, really fun game. Honestly, both of these had some really memorable moments to them, but Mega Man Gold Empire versus Sonic Triple Trouble 16-bit. Following that, we have Tails Adventure versus Super Hang-On. Tails Adventure is a Game Gear game starring Tails, but very different from your classic like Sonic the Hedgehog type gameplay. This is one where Tails has a little robot that he builds. I think it's one that he built himself, but essentially the game is Tails navigating these very maze-like levels, and occasionally piloting this little robot in order to travel around and do things. It's usually more like puzzle than action. Like, it's not so much that you're fighting enemies, but you're sort of just trying to find the way to exit from a stage. Sometimes there's multiple exits too, and some of them it's almost, in some ways, it's a little bit of a Metroidvania in a very, very light sort of way. There are definitely levels that you're going to return to several times, and if you're going for 100%, you're definitely going to be going back to some, because there's things that are fully inaccessible the first time you show up there. It's one of my favorite games on the Game Gear. I just am very charmed by it, and technically I had the world record on speedrun.com for Tails Adventure for a couple months before someone went in and actually did a much better job of it, and I'm glad that they did. But yeah, Tails Adventure. And the other side of things, we have Super Hang-On, which was a motorcycle racing game. I guess it was a racing game, yeah, on the Sega Genesis Mini 2. This was the one, I think Jeff and I were playing for this, and this is the one that involved really awkward attempts at steering, and then our rider just absolutely eating shit, running into as many things as imaginable. It was a very interesting time on that. Definitely part of the Sega, hey, this is basically an arcade game, let's put it on the Genesis type era. But so Tails Adventure versus Super Hang-On. Coming up after that, we have Resident Evil 7 Biohazard versus Night Striker. So Resident Evil 7 Biohazard is the game that essentially, I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. It's the game that saved Resident Evil, and by some measurements might have been the thing that saved Capcom. Mega Man was not getting games. I think Street Fighter was kind of in a weird spot at the time too. I think that was either between 4 and 5 or between 5 and 6. I forget which. And I don't think Monster Hunter was what it is now in terms of intensity at the time. So, and Resident Evil was in a pretty low spot. Resident Evil 6 was received super poorly, and so they didn't really know how well anything was going to do. So they have this like much more like horror-driven Resident Evil game, really bringing it back to its roots. I had never played a Resident Evil game before, so CJ and Felice and I doing that, it really wowed me, and it wound up sort of planting the seed for us to do Let's Play Dead. It lives in a weird spot because I still don't know to this day whether it technically counts as part of Let's Play Dead or not, but it just because like the way that we kind of handled it and stuff was very different, but We are planning to look at Resident Evil 7 again down the line now that we have the context of all the other games that come before it. But extremely effective, sort of not reboot, but like sort of wake up call, I guess, for Resident Evil, because it definitely revitalized it in a huge way. The other game we have is Night Striker, just sort of we really need a name for, like, because there's side-scrolling shoot-em-ups, there's vertical shoot-em-ups, and then there's stuff like Night Striker that's like, and like there's other games like the original Top Gun that do similar, but it's like it's one where you're like facing behind your ship and doing things. But it's not like a flight sim. Like, you're not in the cockpit for this one. You see, it's like in third person. I don't know how to describe it, but it's one where you're kind of going around and shooting stuff and trying to get through levels. It was a very short game, and the fidelity on it was not good. The sprites were extremely low resolution and just blown up for the screen. It felt like something designed for the arcade and forcibly downgraded for the, I think, Sega CD. Very odd little game there, but it's up against Resident 4, Biohazard, Night Striker. Let's see how they do. Oh boy. Okay, so next is Madden NFL 17 versus Hylics. This should be interesting. Madden NFL 17 was it was probably a bad idea. I decided, I really don't even know what convinced me to do this, but I decided to try to do a season of Madden NFL back in, I guess that would have been 2016 into 17, playing as my home team, the New England Patriots. Sound off in the comments with the booze. It's fine. I get it. I was also a fan of the Patriots when we were hot dog shit. So, I grew up with a terrible football team that figured their shit out, and then they got terrible again, and now they're kind of back. So I don't know. But yeah, I played a decent amount of football games growing up, but I hadn't played much of modern, like, Madden NFL. And it showed because I got my shit smoked in those videos. I think I did 9 videos overall over the first 10 weeks of the season, and I only did 9 because I was losing so badly every single time that it was becoming kind of a waste of time. Not like I had to win the whole season to make it worthwhile, but like I was getting my shit rocked to the point where it was a good day if I scored. So I believe there's 9 games in there. It's either 8 or 9 games that are in that playlist. Feel free to check them out. I'm sure I was annoyed for a lot of it. On the other side, we have Hylics, which is an extremely weird and abstract game. Clay, I was not claymation, just clay as the art style. I think like Kirby and the Rainbow Curse to a certain extent, but it's like clay. It's a combination of like clay aesthetic with VGA, like old VGA video signals, and it gives this extremely unsettling and uncanny kind of world. There's the way that it's an RPG where you have, I think, a party of 3 or 4 characters, and it's so difficult to describe. It's very weird. It feels like if you were playing Earthbound on acid. Something about it is just like it's so off, or maybe on shrooms. I don't know. I highly recommend checking that one out just to get a sense of it, if nothing else, because like I couldn't begin to describe the game to you. It's so abstract, but it's a very interesting time. So Madden NFL 17 versus Hylics. Good luck with that. Then after that, we have Mega Man X Command Mission versus Pokemon Violet. Command Mission is such an interesting game in the Mega Man X series because it is both not a platforming shoot 'em up, platform shooter game. It is an RPG, and it is also maybe not canon anymore. It's a little bit unclear. It's a little bit unclear nowadays whether Command Mission is actually canon to the Mega Man series anymore. I think the reason people feel that way, so the implication, I want to say Command Mission takes place in the century after the rest of the X series, which is fine. It could be that, X7 takes place in 2189, X8 takes place in 2196, and then Command Mission takes place in 2201 or something. Like, it's not impossible, but I think that the reason that people are wondering whether it's canon anymore is because it takes place after. It would, based off the year that we're told, take place after both X7 and X8. X8 notably ending with Axel getting his head crystal smashed by the final boss of that game, revealing a Wily emblem in there. Or no, was it a Wily emblem? No, sorry. It was not a Wily emblem. It was a Sigma? I forget if it was a Sigma emblem or if it was just that there was glowing crystal indicating the Sigma virus. I'm trying to remember specifically there was some clear indicator, though, that Axel was potentially infected by something gnarly. But Command Mission just has Axel as a character. So it's unclear. I think there's a possibility of an X9 in which Axel survives and then Command Mission just happens. So I don't know if it's necessarily non-canon. It was one that John and I played for the most part. I think Ben might have been there for a good chunk of it as well. It was interesting to go back to it because it was a game that I actually had on the GameCube growing up, and it's a pretty tough RPG. You really have to stay on top of your shit to get that stuff done without grinding. You can also grind and kind of get powerful enough to make that happen a little easier. But difficult, some very difficult bosses, some extraordinarily difficult super bosses, especially in the post game. Holy shit! But a pretty interesting game nonetheless. And then we have Pokemon Violet, which the most recent generation of Pokemon games. There was one that I streamed solo over the course of like a year or so. I think it was a year for like what was out at the time, and then I came back to it for the DLCs, which would have been what the Teal Mask and the Indigo Disc, as well as the Treasures of Area Zero, just broadly having an ending too. It was an interesting game. It was sort of an open world take on Pokemon, which had the traditional gym league as well as a separate deal with the, antagonistic team plot, as well as a separate, uncover the mysteries of the local professor plot, all kind of wrapped in together in a way where cleverly you have 18 boss fights, which represent each of the 18 types in Pokemon. It was an interesting time. It did have the standard open world problem of struggling to maintain a meaningful story structure throughout, because if you just have the skeletal beats and not a lot of connective tissue, it can be harder to make that story really feel fleshed out. But yeah, so I played that for probably a good chunk of a year and a half on Twitch. And so all the VODs are up at this point, but you can check those out. So Mega Man X Command Mission versus Pokemon Violet. All right, boys and girls and NBs and everyone in between and otherwise, we have Sesame Street 1-2-3 versus Hard Space Shipbreaker. Sesame Street 1-2-3 is a game that we covered with Dustin as the empty video game nerd. I forget whether it was my idea to do this one or not, but it's one that I remember from my childhood, from when I was very, very young. It's an NES game, Sesame Street licensed and all of that, and it's one where I think it's so there were two games for this. There was Sesame Street 1-2-3 and Sesame Street ABC, one for numbers, one for letters. And this was one that I remember scaring the shit out of me, because there was one kind of stage you were in. So I think there were two games. I don't remember what the other game even was, but there was one where you have to count aliens and on the harder difficulty do basic arithmetic, so addition and subtraction, of very small numbers, and you had to figure out how many aliens there were, or how many there would be in total, or how many that would be left. And if you get it right, hooray, they all zap into their ship and, all that. But if you get it wrong, the moon would shake his head. He's up in the sky and I think Grover shows up and shakes his head. Like, he just grows out of the ground and shakes his head. And you get this really low bassy music that goes do 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 do. And it's just like, what the fuck? It's so intense. It's so intense for no reason. And when you're like 5 and your Sesame Street game suddenly does that, that's pretty intense. So it scared the shit out of me. So it was fun to have Dustin go in there and cover that for a video. Weird game. And then we have Hardspace Shipbreaker, which is a game that Dave streamed a couple years back. And this one, I don't know a ton about this game. It appears to be so it's an interstellar sort of salvaging survival game. Like, you're kind of taking apart ships and using the parts to survive, I think is the idea. There's only one video for it, so it'll be pretty easy to check out if you wanted to learn more. But that is Sesame Street 1, 2, 3 versus Hardspace Shipbreaker. Come on, baby, super locomotive. Come on the dance when you dance now. Come on, baby, super locomotive. You're in the train of locomotive ABC. You're doing Sesame Street, so it's 1, 2, 3. So come on, super locomotive with me. You got to clap your cheeks now. All right, so after that mess, we have ARMS versus Super Locomotive. ARMS is one that continued I think it continued the tradition. It might have been the first one. I forget it was the first or second. We gained a bit of notoriety for trying to get in on like beta tests situations and missing the window by an extremely small amount. And ARMS, I think, is the one where we missed our window by a full week. We didn't realize it was the week before. So we missed out on the global test punch. But we did actually cover the game when it came out. We had a handful of episodes with that. And it wound up being a pretty fun fighting game. I think Dustin was there for it. I think Lindsay might have been there for it as well. Pretty decent game. We probably should go back and give it another shot at some point just to get some more time with it. But it was an interesting little one there. And on the other side, we have Super Locomotive, a game for the Sega Genesis that honestly looked more like a Sega Master System game than anything. And it's one where you play as a train trying to make it down the tracks while avoiding being attacked by biplanes dropping bombs on you and stuff. And it's so fascinating because you have a top-down view that helps you decide what tracks you're going to go on. And then you also have a side-to-side view that actually shows you in more detail things that are attacking you and what you're trying to avoid and all that. So it's a really interesting way to present a game like that. Just an interesting concept for a game overall. So, yeah, two very unique ones in here. ARMS versus Super Locomotive. Adlib Moaning in Pain. Next up, we have Mighty Number 9 versus Mario Party 7. Mighty Number 9 is a very interesting part of the Mega Let's Play because that was the part where a little part of me broke, I think. So Keiji Inafune moved on from Capcom and started working with, I think it belonged to him, Concept, which he then decided to make Mighty Number 9 with. And eventually, Red Ash, the Indelible Legend / Red Ash Gear World, which I think was the same as Red Ash Magicicada, I think. But Mighty Number 9 was essentially mostly a reimagining of a Mega Man X-like game for the most part, with different mechanics, different things. You have to, if you dive through enemies as they're very, very weak, you could kind of steal their energy, stuff like that. It's an interesting enough concept. I think the art style that was in the Kickstarter was much more appealing than what we wound up with. A horrendous marketing campaign for the game, like an anime fan on prom night. It was like, oh, no. Yeah, weird stuff. Weird game. We played it in full. I'm on there. I'm in the backers. There's a whole episode. There's a video that's like 5 hours long that is literally just the Kickstarter backer list, and with my own name highlighted as it passes by. Interesting game. Mario Party 7 is one that has been covered as part of Mario Party Madness. This one we return to a lot. It's got some favorites in there. It's got Pagoda Peak. It's got Windmillville. It's got Bowser's Enchanted Inferno. There's a desert level that has been modded to be Gobi Desert from Banjo-Kazooie, where fellow Mario Party Madness connoisseur MMG Mike and myself have an undefeated streak as a team. We are 3-0 at defending Gobi Desert, and hopefully we'll have a chance to repeat that a fourth time very soon. But 7 is a pretty decent one. I'm terrible at delineating between Mario Party games, but this is, I believe, the last one of the GameCube era. I think GameCube was 4, 5, 6, 7. And there's some interesting games that are in there, some interesting mini games and the like. We have plenty of streams that you can check out if you're interested, including the very first Mario Party that I was ever in. I believe Jeff was in that one as well, and so were friends of the show, Born Losers Gaming. They were part of that. They are the reason for the Cutie Patootie nickname that Spear Guy has gained in Mario Party Madness. Hopefully we can get BLG back for another one sometime soon. It was a grand old time. But yeah, Mighty Number 9 versus Mario Party 7. Okay, before we do the next one, I should probably address the elephant in the room. I'm wearing a hat. And that's it, actually. No, there's a bit more. I was in the hospital yesterday. I'm doing okay. Everything's fine. I wound up breaking a bowl while washing dishes and got myself pretty good, but I'm back and I'm okay. I'm keeping this hand up because I feel like people probably would rather look at 2 Band-Aids on my knuckles than this the whole time. Might be a little distracting. So we're gonna move past it and keep going. Apologies for all of this. But next up we have Super Castlevania 4 versus Robo Aleste. Super Castlevania 4 is, or commonly Super Castlevania, is it's essentially, for the most part, a remake of the original Castlevania, is my understanding anyway. But for the Super Nintendo, they've got a bunch of new things going on in there. Generally looks and sounds better. And we covered that for, I believe, the Super NES Classic Edition back in the day. And Robo Aleste, very similarly, for the Sega Genesis Mini 2, is a vertical shoot-'em-up type game, a fun genre, but this was a pretty hard instance of that. So we got Super Castlevania 4 up against Robo Aleste, both one-offs for part of a franchise play. I realize I didn't explain the hat situation. I can't easily take a shower with this just yet. I will be able to within the next day or so. So for right now, I'm just wearing a hat because my hair looks real bad, especially on camera. Next up, we have Knuckles the Echidna in Sonic the Hedgehog 2 versus Dave the Diver. Knuckles in Sonic 2 is a pretty unique game if you've never encountered it. Using Sonic and Knuckles is lock-on technology. You can plug Sonic 2 into the top of it, and it basically patches Sonic 2 in a way where you can play as Knuckles instead. And it's, I believe, the entire game. One very interesting element of it, because Knuckles can glide and he can climb up walls and all of those things. He also retains his shorter jump from Sonic 3 and Knuckles. So what that means is the final boss in the Death Egg, much, much, much harder because you don't have that little bit of extra leeway that Sonic normally has. Dave the Diver, this is one that I have not played myself, but Dave did a one-off stream for it a couple years ago. This is one where you play as a diver named Dave, who is trying to collect a bunch of fish for a sushi restaurant that he's opened up with his friend, but in doing so dives deeper and deeper and eventually uncovers a mysterious situation going on way, way underwater. So kind of an interesting one there as well. Like I said, it was a one-off for Dave during a period where he was kind of doing a bunch of one-off streams. Knuckles in Sonic 2 was one that we did during the earlier days of the Supersonic Let's Play, especially when we got to Sonic and Knuckles and kind of how it interacts with the other games that you can plug into it. So Supersonic Let's Play on that, and Dave the Diver as a one-off stream. After that, we have Mega Man Zero versus the Ninja Warriors. Mega Man Zero is one we played as part of the Mega Let's Play. It is the first of a 4-game series starring Zero, who originates from the Mega Man X series but lives on another century in stasis technically after the distant, it wasn't supposed to be distant, but now it is distant, future of Mega Man X5, and through the backstory of the Mega Man Zero series, you learn was also after the Elf Wars. Zero gets reawakened, and he helps out a human and robot settlement or kind of resistance group as they fend off a number of different enemies. Some human, some robot, some a little bit of both. And in one case, even Zero's former body. So rendered in a different art style. It's kind of complicated, but we played that as part of the Mega Let's Play. I think it was actually what we played immediately after Mega Man X6, so it was kind of a big departure from what we had been doing up at the time. And the Ninja Warriors is one we did for the Sega Genesis Mini 2. This one is a side-scrolling beat-em-up, a little more in the realm of like your Kung Fu type games than anything else. It's very slow and methodical and deliberate in terms of its speed. And it was also very hard. Honestly, the most memorable part of it was on the main menu, there's like game start, option, and then Zuntata. And Zuntata is I don't even know how to describe this. I assume that a bunch of the people who made the game were also in a band called Zuntata, and it's referred to in the game as the Ninja Warriors Prologue, but it's basically a story of like this band. It's so weird. I would definitely recommend checking out. It's a single video, but yeah, so Mega Man Zero versus the Ninja Warriors. Then next up we have Sonic the Hedgehog 8-bit versus Pokemon Scarlet. So Sonic 8-bit. So this is essentially, I think we played the Master System version, but so Sonic obviously had a Genesis version that most people are aware of. There's also an 8-bit version that was released on both the Master System and the Game Gear. The two are very, very similar. They're essentially the same game, but like rendered a little bit differently. Like there's a different resolution, I want to say, between the two of them. And there's little tiny effects of that, with the exception of, I think, the very first boss from Underground Zone is substantially harder in one of them because of the smaller screen size, and also because of that, you can't like dodge. There's rocks that are falling that can knock you into the boss, and if that happens, you die. It's a whole thing. But this was very, very early days for the Supersonic Let's Play. It might have literally been the second game that we played, second or third. Pokemon Scarlet's kind of an interesting case. This is one of those kind of asterisk type entries, because what this is not so much me playing Pokemon Scarlet as it is me playing Pokemon Violet while connecting to folks who were playing Pokemon Scarlet in order to, because that's essentially how you, other than trading, this would be the way that you could get Scarlet exclusive Pokemon, is by teaming up with someone who's playing Scarlet, because essentially everyone's games are contributing to the spawns in various areas. So this would be how you get spawns on the normal in Paldea. This is how you get spawns in I believe Kitakami and Blueberry Academy have version exclusives. Area Zero also very much has version exclusives, as well as the different Paradox Pokemon that you have between the two games. So wasn't really Scarlet per se, but we were encountering Scarlet stuff, and we were engaging with the game itself. So when I put it out, I kind of listed it as Pokemon Scarlet, and we sort of essentially hand-waved it in as being Scarlet. So this is really a single stream among the Pokemon Violet series, but yeah, so Pokemon Scarlet versus Sonic 8-bit. All right, next up we have Pilot Wings versus Final Fight CD. Pilot Wings is kind of an interesting one. So this was another one we played as part of the Empty Video Game Nerd. This was this was either Dustin's like second or third. We did Pilot Wings and F-Zero very close together, but Pilot Wings was one that he just took a spin on. It's a game where you it's interesting because it's simultaneously a flight sim, but also like you skydive and parachute out of your plane to do like a landing and stuff. But this was another classic. This might have been my favorite EVGN episode, actually. Just really good shit the whole time through. Dustin is perfect at nailing the rhythm that he wants to go for the EVGN. It's so good. And then we got Final Fight CD, where it is, I mean, if you ever played a Final Fight game, it is that. It's a side-scrolling beat-em-up. You got Mike Hager, you got Cody Travers, you got Guy, all of that stuff. Not a lot specifically to say about that. It was part of the Sega Genesis Mini 2. So, yeah, Pilot Wings versus Final Fight CD. Then we have an interesting one. We have Super Smash Brothers versus Pikmin. Smash Brothers is one that we played. So this is the original N64 Smash Brothers. We played this for the Dreamy Let's Play when we ultimately decided that we weren't just going to play Kirby games, but also because it's HAL Labs and it's very Kirby related, which wound up being a good call, I think, when Smash Ultimate came out and Kirby became essentially the not main character, but like the primary starting character for World of Light. But Smash Brothers, we decided it's so close in there, and obviously, you know, Masahiro Sakurai is uses a lot of elements of one and the other. Like the Smash there's a Smash Power in a few of the Kirby games. Master Hand shows up as a mini boss in a few spots. There's also menus that are pretty closely shared between like Smash Melee and Kirby Air Ride and all of that. So it felt right to include Smash. So we played that as part of the earlier-ish portion of the Dreamy Let's Play. It was interesting getting to go back and experience that again. It had been a few years since the last time I picked up the N64 version. We also have Pikmin, which is a series that I streamed a few years back. It wasn't part of anything. It was just a set of streams to do that. And I had never actually played Pikmin before, so it was definitely an interesting experience, kind of learning how all of that stuff worked. Chat was super great and helpful on that. We got everything, including beating the smoke thing. There's a super boss that's in there that's pretty hard, actually. I think I took 2 tries to get it, but it was a good time. I'll have to get back into playing Pikmin sometime soon. We got some more games to do at some point. But yeah, Super Smash Brothers versus Pikmin. After that, we have Splatoon 2 versus Zone of the Enders HD Edition. So Splatoon 2 is one that we have very technically experienced because the only content of Splatoon 2 on the channel is us logging on to check out the test splat and then discovering that it had literally ended, I believe, minutes before. So we didn't get to do anything with it. And then that's all there was, and I put it online because why not showcase our stupidity a little bit. So that's Splatoon 2. Zone of the Enders HD Edition is a game that Dave streamed at one point. It was a one-off stream there as well. It's kind of a flying super mech type experience. One of those, target and shoot, duck and weave, and try to take down big bosses, that sort of thing. So both of these are one-off entries, for better or for worse. And yeah, someday I will get into Splatoon 2 properly. We will have to make it happen. I've done Splatoon 1 in full, so we'll have to get into 2 also. Splatoon 2 versus Zone of the Enders HD Edition. Next up, we have Dark Souls 3 versus Mario Party 6. So Dark Souls 3 is one that's been covered once, quite a while back on the channel. Ben essentially streamed a big chunk of it. I don't know if he finished the game in one sitting, but he streamed a shitload of Dark Souls 3 right after it came out, to the point where I think he actually streamed some Dark Souls 1 while waiting for the game to download, and then once it was done, he jumped in and he did a whole bunch of streams. Over the next 3 days, he streamed a bunch. I have not played it myself, but I've heard really good things. It is a Dark Souls game. There's a couple Dark Souls games on here and FromSoft games. Mario Party 6, it is a Mario Party game. This one is on the GameCube, and the main draw for 6 is that it features a day-night cycle. It cycles every 3 turns normally, but with Mario Party Madness, we always mess with a bunch of stuff, so sometimes we have weird controls for that. A few very notable maps and boards that we use on there a lot are Clockwork Castle, which is one where the whole board reverses direction based on which, whether it's day or night. And either Donkey Kong is circling around or Bowser is circling around. And if you get Donkey Kong, you get a star. If Bowser gets you, he takes a star, I think. Or does he take money? I think he takes a star. I'd have to double check. We don't play vanilla very often. The other one being Castaway Bay, where it's a big, long, winding way to get there. And at the very end, there's DK or Bowser, depending on whether it's night or day. So you're really trying to time your way down there. But so Mario Party 6... I'm a big fan of the day-night mechanic. I think it adds a lot to the boards. Not everybody does. And we have Dark Souls 3, the final Dark Souls entry, at least thus far. So those are the two that are up against each other for this one. Hey, quick interjection from Hatless Future Rick. Mario Party 6 is also where I got to do a game with Schaeferless Productions, which was pretty fucking rad too. If that matters at all to anybody's votes about which one we covered the most interesting. Just wanted to throw that in. I literally saw it right before I recorded that, and I somehow completely forgot to mention it. So that, feels like something worth bringing up there. All right, then after that we have Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars versus Metal Hellsinger. Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars, not to be confused with the Switch remake that I think has already shown up in this. Legend of the Seven Stars is the Super Nintendo original version. It's the one that I grew up with personally. This is one that we played as the finale to the Super NES Classic Edition series, and so we played it in full. I think this is the one that actually kind of kickstarted us doing our console plays that end with a full play of something else, or not something else, but something related to it or in it. This is one that we grabbed partly because it's just a classic, partly because Ben had never played it before, and we were like, all right, this would be great for Ben to play then. We can definitely make this happen. So Ben played the entire thing, top to bottom, and I miss it every day. So it was a great... We actually wound up following that up with at least one, if not two more series that were Ben's first time playing such and such thing. But it was great to go through that together. Metal Hellsinger is one that Dave did as part of one of his one-off streams. This is one where this is a rhythm FPS. You're fighting your way through hell, and there's metal music playing in the background. Not even in the background; it's very much part of the game. And similar to games like your Crypt of the Necrodancer and even your actual full-blown rhythm games, your Guitar Hero, all that. If you are acting in rhythm with the music, then you get buffs and bonuses, and you can do special things and all of that. But it relies on keeping the rhythm as you go, sticking to the rhythm of the song while you're doing all of that. So very interesting premise. I remember seeing an E3 trailer for it or something before it came out. But so yeah, we have Super Mario RPG, the Super Nintendo version versus Metal Hellsinger. All right, after that we have Mega Man Extreme versus Clay Fighter. Mega Man Extreme is, I don't know if I'd call it necessarily a spin-off exactly, but it's a Game Boy Color game in the Mega Man X series, where in a very similar style to the Game Boy classic Mega Man games, you are playing against returning Maverick bosses from I want to say X1 and X2, maybe X3 also. I don't remember if X3 was in there at this point. But you are in a computer and you're fighting essentially simulations of these old bosses. It is, I believe, it's either this or its sequel is the source of the X, it was Sigma again, meme and all of that. It is one that we played for the Mega Let's Play, and then we played it again because I got to do a speed run of it as part of Mega Manathon 6 back in 2015 at MagFest. And it was a lot of fun. John and Ben joined me on the couch as we did it. And I made a super critical error at one point that very much threw the whole thing off the rails. So when you play the game, you normally you play on normal mode, and then you can play on hard mode. And when you do hard mode, if you have a save for normal mode, you get all of the powers you had in normal mode, which is useful because for some reason, some of the bosses in normal mode are weak to weapons from hard mode, and some of the bosses in hard mode are weak to weapons from normal mode. for some reason. So on stage, I beat normal mode, went quite quickly. And then during the credits, I hit the reset button being like, yeah, we'll just save some time here. Forgetting, not forgetting, I didn't know this, now I do, that if you reset, it actually doesn't keep your save. So I started a hard mode and then realized that I didn't have any of my weapons from normal mode, which slowed things down to start. But eventually things were okay until I reached the Gimel fight. I think it was Gimel, who rides around on his little ninja carpet thing, and I could not for the life of me beat him for like many minutes. I don't remember how long. I feel like I blacked out a little bit. I forget if I beat him or if I just used a code to get past him. It is also where I got the carpet. I gave myself the Carpet Man moniker on our Discord for a while, because we kept calling him Carpet Man. It was like a whole thing. But Mega Man Extreme. On the flip side, we have Clay Fighter, which is part of the Sega Genesis Mini 2 series. My experience with Clay Fighter was more being aware of it in the N64 era as Clay Fighter 33 and a third. But Clay Fighter is essentially a claymation fighting game. No, that's actually it. It's a claymation fighting game. Amazingly, it got a sequel. It seems like the sort of thing conceptually that you wouldn't expect to get more than one entry, especially during an era where Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter were like doing extremely well. I guess that's why it inspired so many clones. But yeah, so Mega Man Extreme versus Clay Fighter. Then after that, we have Mega Man X6 versus Sewer Shark. Mega Man X6 is one that we did some weirdness with for the actual series. So we were trying to hit a deadline really hard with that one. Essentially, we were trying to wrap up kind of an arc of a meta plot that we were working with at the time, which was going to resolve with Mega Man X6 and then start a new thing with Mega Man Zero. And we were trying to sync it up timeline-wise, or not timeline-wise, real life. We were trying to sync it up essentially with the start of the Supersonic Let's Play, because we just, like, a bunch of the scripts we had in mind were playing with the idea of, in the meta plot, my character, which is me, but like my character being in a different dimension from John, and each of us covering different games in kind of different ways and all of this stuff. And so we took so long with the few games that came before it that we had no time at all. So we recorded X6 in, I want to say, 4 different like 2-hour sessions, and put them up as 4 enormous episodes, which includes a really, really long section of me fighting Hymax. I think it was Hymax, and struggling extremely hard to beat him. It was like 2 hours just for that fight, and I fast forwarded it down to like a minute. Except on D-pad on paused. I think on there we have the full thing uncut, so it's a much longer thing there. It was a weird way to handle it, but it did involve one of our more interesting live bits at the end with slow-mo cameras and table dives. We were looking to get rid of an old table that we had. It was literally the one that was in our living room, so I worked it into the thing being like, all right, what if I dive across this? And if it breaks, then that's fine. Not a big deal. And if it doesn't, then I don't know, we'll hang on to it and we'll do something else with it. So I did a table dive and only one leg fell off. It actually stayed mostly up. And so we filmed the end of it with that. And then afterwards, we got into Mega Man Zero. We had a really cool ending with it all there, I think. I'm literally getting goosebumps right now because I'm remembering how dry the wood of that table was. It was an unfinished table, if I recall correctly. So literally just the thought of running my hand across it is like making my skin crawl a little bit. Sorry, that was a weird tangent. And then there's Sewer Shark, which is an FMV type game that was on the Sega Genesis Mini 2. And in this one, you are basically just like diving down tunnels, shooting stuff. It's functionally the equivalent of old vector graphics games. If you remember those from like the arcade days where you'd be in like a big tunnel and you're either, going up on the walls or you're shooting stuff. And this is the shooting stuff variety. They'd have FMV cutscenes, especially if you lost. Very weird little game overall. It was such an odd experience. But yeah, Mega Man X6 versus Sewer Shark. All right, so then we have Kirby Superstar versus Superstar Surgeon, a sensitive subject. So Kirby Superstar is one. Oh, we got the Battle of the Superstars. Kirby Superstar is one that we played a couple times, actually. Now, we played it originally as part of the Dreamy Let's Play. It is, if you're not familiar, it's sort of a combination of like, they present it as being a combination of a handful of smaller games put together, which it is, but really there's like 2 or 3 games that are kind of the real Kirby Superstar. I would say the real games would be like Revenge of Meta Knight, The Great Cave Offensive, and Milky Way Wishes. Everything else that's in there is kind of there as like a little bonus, but those are sort of the 3 real ones. We also played it as part of the Super NES Classic Edition. We just did a brief thing there. We also played it as part of the 10th anniversary marathon stream, which I believe I speed ran. I think speed ran. But I did a full speed run of the game for that as well. As well as it's one that I've come back to for the Nightmare streams, which involved one of the more legendarily weird parts of that series, in which to spice up the arena for the sake of the Nightmare streams, I did the entire thing without any abilities. I was not allowed to take an ability going in, and I was not allowed to use any abilities at any point during the boss fights, which for most of them was like doable. A lot of them it was kind of easy. A handful of them it was kind of hard. 1 or 2 were like actively painful. Like the computer virus is slow, extremely tedious. And there's a few others that are kind of like that, but the worst one for sure was the actual Meta Knight battle. It was really, really rough because, as it turns out, technically, Meta Knight does not have any inhalable moves. He doesn't. I'm trying to remember exactly. I want to say there's one specific move he does that creates an arc that can be inhaled, but you have to get kind of close to it. And if you miss, then he just hits you, and he hits hard. So that was a really difficult. I want to say I played for about 10 hours just doing the arena, and I did finally get there. And thankfully, in Superstar, in Superstar Ultra, Meta Knight's battle does have other things you can inhale, and we haven't gotten there yet. We're getting there very soon, actually, but that'll be a little bit easier. This was rough for a game that I played a shitload growing up. That was easily one of the most challenging things that I've done in a very, very, very long time. Superstar Surgeon, a sensitive subject, was one of the games we did for Special Delivery. It was one of the winning games from Ludum Dare 53, where the theme was delivery. And a few of the, not even a few, a bunch of the games in Ludum Dare 53 took the inspiration of delivery, meaning to like deliver news. So in this case, this was a surgeon that was delivering bad news to the family of a patient that died. And it was kind of just an interesting concept. You would have a bunch of these like thumbs up and skull balls, and if you shot a thumbs up, like and they were falling down the screen, you had a laser in the middle. Very, very. I was gonna say Space Invaders, but not quite that one. There are a few others. There's one from like the Atari era where you just have a stationary thing in the middle that rotates, and this was kind of like that. And so if you shot a thumbs up ball, then you got good points, and if you shot the skull, you got bad points. And depending on how you do, and if in a way that's kind of similar to the Oendon games, you either succeed or fail at at the phrases of. You essentially deliver a verse of a song where you're delivering that news to the next of kin. And if you got thumbs up, then they deliver it in a careful or uplifting or sensitive sort of way. And if you got a skull, then they stumbled over it, or they upset them, or they straight up imply like medical malpractice. It's a very interesting game. We didn't play it for very long because there wasn't a ton of content to it. It's a game jam game. That's kind of how it goes. Yeah, so Kirby Superstar versus Superstar Surgeon, a sensitive subject. Okay, after that, we have Star Fox versus the Jackbox Party Pack 9. So, Star Fox, I mean, it's the original, evidently so good that they can never, ever, ever stop remaking it to one degree or another. We played it as part of the Super NES Classic Edition. It's actually the first game we played for because then we followed it up with a run of Star Fox 2, which had previously been unreleased. We only got the one-off episode for it. At some point, I'm probably going to play it into a greater degree because of the new Star Fox game that is coming out, is out. It's like right now. I think it might be out by now. And the Jackbox Party Pack 9 is one that we played. I think we only played it for Jackathon. I don't know if we played it before that because we had kind of reduced our Jackbox Party Pack playing by that point. But Party Pack 9, it's got Fibbage 4, it's got which is your standard convince other people that your lie is the truth type game. There was Quicksort, which was kind of an interesting, like, as a team, you're kind of figuring out what order things should go in. That one was kind of odd. I don't know how I feel about that one. There's Roomerang, which is essentially a Big Brother type reality game situation where you're voting each other out and you're returning and all of that stuff. There was also, what were the other ones that were in there? There was one, the name of which I can't remember, in which you are essentially buying vintage stuff and trying to sell it for high value, making up silly stories about it. I've played board games that work with this premise, but it's essentially it's an auction type game at the end of the day. It's a fun one in there. And then the last one, what was it? I literally just looked at this right before I did this. Nope, I've forgotten. I forgot what it was. That's okay. But yeah, so Jackbox Party Pack 9 it was a pretty decent one. I think the games in there were okay. Quicksort was a little bit on the weak side. The auction type game is also the main art game in this pack, I believe, because some of it involves you drawing something and then... Oh, no, sorry. Nope, I'm mixing it up. The fifth game was the art type game in which you are occasionally drawing stuff. You don't draw stuff all the time, but essentially you have like a spectrum from one end to another, and everybody kind of votes on where they think a certain thing or certain prompt falls along a spectrum, and then how everybody votes winds up resulting in, points delivery. Anyway, so Star Fox versus the Jackbox Party Pack 9. All right, after that we have Kirby's Superstar Stacker versus One Piece Odyssey. So Kirby's Superstar Stacker is a Super Famicom kind of follow-up, I guess, to Kirby's Star Stacker on the Game Boy. The gameplay for them is virtually identical. We played it for the Dreamy Let's Play, but the idea is that you, for this one, I mean for both of them, the idea is that it's sort of a Tetris-like puzzle game, any of those like block puzzle games where you're trying to eliminate, in this case, you eliminate... Essentially, Kirby's animal buddies are in the blocks that you can drop as well as stars, and if there's ever a straight, uninterrupted line between two copies of the same animal buddy, you will eliminate those and any stars in between them. And what sets Superstar Stacker apart from the original, which was more focused on its like puzzle mode, I guess both of them had one actually. Now that I'm thinking about it, Superstar Stacker also had a mode where you play single player. I believe you had to like play against a bunch of computer players, and then at the end, you had a single opportunity to take down a final boss whose name I realized I didn't check before I started this, but it's a little witch. It's a little witch character. Extremely hard. The game's entirely in Japanese because it never came to the States, so you don't get a lot of the dialogue. Though we did play it. When we played it as part of the original Dreamy Let's Play, Lindsay, I think, was translating for us on the fly, and we got the gist of what was going on there, which was pretty fun. One Piece Odyssey is a game that CJ streamed a while back. I don't think he played the whole game, but it's essentially an open world RPG type situation, very much in the vein of like your Dragon Quest XI type games, where it's not strictly speaking, overworld, but it's a lot of very large, expansive, explorable areas. You got RPG battles, all that jazz. I know nothing about One Piece, so I can't speak to it at all. But CJ was very into it. Felice was on there a few times as well. There's at least like a good, 10, I think, maybe more, streams that are in there for you to check out. But yeah, so Kirby Super Star Stacker versus One Piece Odyssey. Okay, we got another asterisk one. This is Sonic the Hedgehog, the Screensaver versus Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes. Sonic the Hedgehog, the Screensaver is one that we technically have played in the sense that I did download the screensaver, which includes all of its art assets, and then I watched a video of the screensaver in action because the screensaver basically doesn't really function on like post XP type systems. Actually, or did we get it running? Either way, in the intro to another video, we wind up, it might have been Sonic Jam. We used the screensaver. I might have just screen recorded while I did have it active. But we just have, it's literally just a couple slides and then we're off to the races. But it is strictly speaking the full Sonic the Hedgehog, the Screensaver experience. So there's not a lot there that you can say that we didn't cover. Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, on the other hand, that's one that we played as part of our Extra Life 2022 event, along with Jackbox Party Pack 9, I'm realizing. The D-Pad Supersoft Extra Life Charity Marathon stream. Our cupcake themed Extra Life stream. In this one, if you're not familiar with it, the premise is this can be done with like a computer with like two screens, or you can do it with a VR headset and other people watching on a TV. There's a couple ways you can do this, but essentially I think I was tasked with trying to defuse the bomb while everybody else on stream was tasked with giving me the various instructions. I think we might have passed it around a little bit. I vaguely recall Sarah also doing one of the defusals. Defusals, is that the right word? It's a really interesting game. One of the coolest asymmetrical premises that I can think of and that I've had a chance to check out. But it's a really cool time. Sonic the Hedgehog, the Screensaver versus Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes. Then after that, we have Mega Man Legends versus Alien Isolation. Mega Man Legends, or as I knew it growing up, Mega Man 64, PlayStation Mega Man game, takes place in the far future. It's the furthest future of any Mega Man game. Well, I guess of any Mega Man game series, because there's two other Mega Man games that do take place after that. But actually, no, one of them takes place before. It just got released after that. 3D Mega Man game, 3D platforming and run and gun and shoot and jump and all that stuff. Really fun. It's got voice acting. It's a very nostalgic game for me. We played it, kind of, I think, in the middle-ish of the Mega Let's Play many years ago. Really good. And there's not a lot that I can say about it just because, like, it's a longer kind of game, so there were a lot of things going on for it, but it was fun getting to experience it again and getting to share that with people, on the team and all of that. It was a good time. On the Alien Isolation side, we have a CJ stream. I believe he did play this one in full. CJ and Felice playing this one where you are, I don't know if it's on the, was it Nostromos? I don't know a lot about Alien either, but you are on a ship where you're trying to evade detection by the Xenomorph. I think it's the Xenomorph. I don't think it's something else. But in the vein of a lot of horror type games of the post-amnesia era, one of the main things you wind up doing is if you think that the Xenomorph is nearby, you run and you hide. You hide in a locker, you hide under or in or above stuff to try to avoid detection. Very suspenseful sort of game. Lots of, high stakes, high stress kind of stuff going on there. So Mega Man Legends versus Alien Isolation. Next up, we have Final Fantasy VI versus Puyo Puyo Sun. So Final Fantasy VI, to be clear, I think we mentioned before, randomizers are considered separate entries on our list. So this is vanilla Final Fantasy VI. which we played briefly for the Super NES Classic Edition at one point, and then later on, John actually streamed I think, full run of the game from when this was back when he was living in California, and had like his own like overlay and stuff for that. But full run of that, John's a huge FF6 fan, so it was something that he was like really excited about getting into. On the flip side, we have Versus Puyo Puyo Sun, which is a bit of Japanese wordplay going on that doesn't really translate much here, but sun, which is referring in this case to there's a sun Puyo that's in the game that like messes with your opponent a lot more than regular garbage blocks, which sounds so the English word sun sounds very similar-ish to the Japanese word san, which is 3. It's the number 3. This was the third Puyo Puyo game. And, just a silly thing to have there. But Sarah and I played that. I think we played against each other and then played some single player in there as well. This might have been the first Puyo Puyo game that we played that was not a licensed version, by which I mean we had previously played 2 different versions of Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine as well as Kirby's Avalanche, which come from 2 different Puyo Puyo games, if I recall correctly. Was there another one that we played that was also licensed? I think it was just those. But I think this is the first like standard regular Puyo Puyo game that we played. So that was kind of a neat treat to actually see those characters for the first time they're involved there. But yeah, so Final Fantasy VI versus Puyo Puyo Sun. Then after that, we have Sonic Crackers versus Earthworm Jim 2. So Sonic Crackers is one that we played, I think, as part of the intro to Knuckles Chaotix when we played it for in full for the Supersonic Let's Play in 2016. So Sonic Crackers is an unfinished prototype for the game that would ultimately become Knuckles Chaotix. This was an early enough phase of development that you play as Sonic and Tails as opposed to Knuckles and any of the Chaotix or Heavy or Bomb or any of them. It's extremely glitchy. Everything is unfinished top to bottom. You kind of have to, I think you press start to advance from the overworld to a stage and back to the overworld and stuff like that. So it's a little bit weird. There's spots where the level geometry is just fully broken. It's a mess, honestly. But it's a charming little piece of the game's history, which is kind of cool. Earthworm Jim 2, it is a sequel to Earthworm Jim. We played it as part of the Sega Genesis Mini 2 series. Not a lot to say about it. It comes from the era of like, I would almost say Nickelodeon-esque, like weird platformer. Like Earthworm Jim, I think, had an actual cartoon at the time as well that these games were adapted from. But yeah, it's kind of hard to describe a game like this. You play as a worm in a super suit. I don't know the mechanics of it, but he's got a little blasty gun and he shoots stuff, and he also can use his head to like do things, grab onto stuff, all of that. It's a fun game, definitely a weird game. Sonic Crackers versus Earthworm Jim 2. It's another day. I've taken a shower at last, and I've got a new shirt. Let's not think too hard about it. Next up, we have. I'm also holding it with this hand because I don't have Band-Aids on the other side here. And next up, we have 1-2 Switch versus Populous. It's going to be a weird one. So 1-2 Switch is the game that we played before Breath of the Wild as part of our sort of unboxing of the Nintendo Switch. It is a collection of micro games based off of various things that the Joy-Cons can do, the controllers for the Switch. Making it essentially a tech demo in the same vein as like Wii Sports, Nintendo Land, Astro's Playroom in a similar way for the PS4. So this was sort of along those lines, and also Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour in a certain sense. We had a bunch of us there for that. We even had Remy there for a bit. Rennie with an N. And it was a good time. We had some horrifying images that came out of it, but it was kind of interesting to have a sort of a little mini party game there. Populous, on the other hand, is one we played for the Sega Genesis Mini 2. This is essentially the creator of the God game genre. It's one where you are playing essentially as a deity, helping guide a civilization forward through time and attempting to survive conflicts with other civilizations. You have a very small. It's weird because if I recall correctly, it's presented almost like a book, and on the page there's like a chunk of land that's kind of propped up. It's isometric, and you've got like people walking around on them and buildings and things like that. So kind of interesting, a little bit esoteric in how it's laid out in terms of like your UI and like your controls and things. But it was an interesting kind of game. Not generally my cup of tea. It's a little bit like anything that goes further into that realm than like Sim City is usually not something that I'm personally interested in too much, but it was interesting to check out for a little bit. So we got 1-2 Switch versus Populous. After that, we have Sega Sonic the Hedgehog versus Mia's Pizza. So Sega Sonic the Hedgehog, kind of a weird name for it because it was during a period of time, a very brief, like 1 year period of time, where Sega and Sonic Team were kind of debating rebranding Sonic a little bit as Sega Sonic. For reasons, I'm still not entirely sure what the deal there was, but there's a few things that have Sega Sonic specifically in marketing. But this was an arcade game, 3 players with trackball, and this was the introduction of, or I think it was the introduction for Mighty. For Ray, it was definitely his introduction. I'm trying to remember whether this came before or after Chaotix, but featured you playing as Sonic, Mighty, and Ray as they try to escape a Dr. Robotnik hideout, use the trackball to move and like spin dash and all that stuff and escape. Cute little game, doesn't last very long, but it's just an interesting sort of experience. I still would love to get a hold of a couple trackball controllers to play that thing properly at some point. But it was an interesting experience for that. Mia's Pizza is a game that we played for Special Delivery, and that was one that used the delivery theme of Ludum 53 for pizza deliveries. So you play. This is a genre of game you've probably seen a lot of before. A lot of ads online now for mobile games tend to have, whether it's accurate or not, this kind of gameplay cycle of like, oh, you're making pizzas and you've got customers and you have to get it to them before they get upset. And, you last as long as you're able to keep customers going and keep making money. Money gets you upgrades, that sort of thing. Cute little game. I believe it did pretty well. It was like number 4, I think, on the whole list. So it was a fun time. But so Sega Sonic versus Mia's Pizza. After that, we have Star Fox 2 versus Gain Ground. Star Fox 2 is interesting. So it's one that we played as part of the Super NES Classic Edition. And it was a game that had not been released beforehand. This was one that got released as part of the Super NES Classic Edition, and it's a sequel to the original Star Fox. Bits from this game, when it eventually got canceled, made their way into Star Fox 64, which means that this game also has, to a certain extent, been remade like 4 times now. It was an interesting experience. The sprite work was kind of not great in my opinion, but also the game wasn't done. So like maybe there would have been another pass for some of this stuff normally. Interesting though, we did I think 3 episodes of it to play like a full run of the game. If you've played Star Fox 1, it's going to feel pretty familiar in terms of how the game is laid out, and perhaps that's why the game ultimately got canceled, is that it maybe felt like too much of the same, especially as the Super NES was starting to get late into its life cycle. But it was an interesting time, though. On the other side, we have Gain Ground, another Sega Genesis Mini 2 entry. This one's interesting because it's a top-down. It almost looks like it would be a like shoot-'em-up style game, but rather than being like a scrolling vertical situation, it's just you have stages full of enemies, and you're kind of just dodging their attacks and trying to knock them out. It's hard to describe this one, honestly. It almost feels like it could be a predecessor to some like bullet hell type experiences, but like they're not like doing any like geometric patterns or anything that like the hallmarks of a bullet hell these days. Just an interesting sort of title, though. But we had just the one-off video for that versus the 3 videos for Star Fox 2. So Star Fox 2 versus Gain Ground. I apologize, too, if I'm like kind of shaking my hair back into place or whatever. I like I mentioned, I don't have the Band-Aids on the other side of my hand here, and I just didn't want to show this off too much just feels distracting. But next up we have Pokemon Sun and Moon Special Demo version versus Castle Crashers. So Sun and Moon Special Demo version was the second, and I guess at this point, of two. I don't think they really did it again. It's the second demo version that was put out ahead of a 3DS Pokemon release. John and I played this when it first kind of came out there. I actually don't even remember all that much of the special demo for this one. It was very, very short. It might have actually been shorter than the Ruby Sapphire one, to be honest. But I think that they kind of realized that people were kind of like, on the demos, so they did not keep that going into the Switch era, which kind of makes sense. Like, it's not like they're just taking you into a chunk of the game and letting you play it. Like, they have to devise new scenarios that are exclusive to the demo versions and all that. So it's understandable why they, wouldn't do that necessarily any longer. It's also non-canon chunks of the game. Like, it's a very strange presentation. On the other side, we have Castle Crashers, which was done by Jeff and the Sunday crew a ways back. If you're not familiar with Castle Crashers, then I think the only answer there is that you just weren't playing indie games in like the 2010s or anything like that. Or I guess even like the late 2000s. I'm trying to remember when it came out. It probably came out in like 2009, maybe even earlier. But I believe it's from the Alien Hominid crew, the folks that now have like Battle Block Theater and all of those things. But essentially, you play as a set of knights as they are trying to rescue the princess, whose name I don't remember. It's a very unique sort of cartoony aesthetic and vibe throughout the whole thing. It's very like Ren and Stimpy-esque in its types of humor. Maybe not that far, but it's got combinations of just like cartoon violence and like gross out type humor stuff going on. There's a deer that is so scared that it's shitting itself constantly in one of the stages. Like, that's kind of the vibe you get with that. But it's otherwise essentially a pretty traditional side scrolling beat 'em up type game. And yeah, it's a really fun game. I'm sure that the Sunday crew had a good time with that. But you can check out, there's a link for that if you want to see how they did with that. So Pokemon Sun and Moon Special Demo version versus Castle Crashers. All right, following that we have Sonic Jam for the Sega Saturn versus Bonanza Bros. Bonanza Brothers. It's rendered everywhere as Bonanza Bros, BROS period, which is short for brothers, like Super Mario Brothers. But for whatever reason, the box art, which is probably going to be right here, lays it out as Bonanza Brothers, full word, which is so strange. I've never seen like Mario Brothers do that. Super Mario Brothers, like something about it just feels odd. But so anyway, Sonic Jam is a game we played for the Supersonic Let's Play. It's interesting because it might be the earliest. No, second. It would be the number 2 because there was the Sonic. Was it Sonic and Knuckles collection on the PC? The one that famously was the first to swap out Sonic 3's music with midified versions of what we now know are the like prototype, not even prototype, but like the early music that was originally going to be in the game before they started swapping it out. But it is a collection. It is a collection of those. I believe it retains. I would have to double check. I think Sonic Jam does retain the soundtrack to Sonic 3 because I think it is functionally just running ROMs of those games. But we didn't play any of the Genesis titles that were included there. We played the overworld stuff, which had like some missions, a couple things you could do. It was also Sonic's first foray into 3D, which was it actually felt, if I recall correctly, it felt a little stiff, but otherwise was pretty decent. And felt like a good sort of prototype for what we would get with Sonic Adventure later on. On the other side, we have Bonanza Brothers, which is a kind of a stealth game. You're playing as one or two robbers, I think, or gentlemen, not gentlemen thieves, but thieves who are out to get specific like items from a building where you're kind of, it's side scrolling and you're climbing up and down and doing stuff. There's a spin-off to the Chizo mythos that has a similar sort of vibe to it. I think it's called Trilby, The Art of Theft, which is a prequel to 5 Days a Stranger and all of that. But Yeah, interesting game. Both of these were kind of strange little one-off. Not one-off for Sonic Jam. We did at least a few episodes, but yeah, Sonic Jam versus Bonanza Brothers. Okay, next we have Sonic Dreams Collection versus Mario Party 5. Sonic Dreams Collection sure is an interesting one. So it is a fan game / fake lost media type game. It is a collection of, I think, 3 or 4 different games or game experiences that were essentially, the premise was, these were games that were never finished or never published from the late Saturn and early Dreamcast era. And there's one that's like an OC creator. There's one that is there's something to do with Robotnik, but you had to have a working like connection to like a certain server to make it work. There was a movie maker that was involved. And there was a like My Date with Sonic in there as well. As you play it, it starts to get extremely weird and disturbing. Very fetishy material going on. I'm trying to even think of all the stuff that's in there. I believe there's foot stuff. I believe there's Mpreg type stuff. At one point, you are definitely in the birth canal and see a Big the Cat, like very monstrous version of him, scraping to try to get out. There's definitely like weird baby stuff going on. There's a lot of things happening there. It's an experience, and it is also I didn't know how weird it was going to be when we played it, but I had decided at the time that was the vehicle we were going to use to announce the Supersonic Let's Play, and I've kind of included it as sort of the like game 0 of the Supersonic Let's Play. Strictly speaking, I would say that like the first proper game is actually when we cover Sonic 1, but like it's not that important. Dreams Collection was very, very weird, though. Highly recommend the video. It's a single video. You should go check it out. Mario Party 5 is interesting because of the Mario Party games, I think it's the one that we've played the least. And I had one full game in Mario Party 5 years ago, and then we had sort of a Madness versus Bonfire. So there's the Mario Party Madness crew, which does include to a certain extent at this point, but it originally started as a separate thing from the Digital Bonfire, which is where, if I recall correctly, like Shell Shock Prime and MMG Mike and Matt Big Fat and Silverstone Condor and all of them are kind of based out of originally, and they still do that stuff too. Like they're not like that is still their main gig. But so we had a game that was Madness versus Bonfire, and it was a collection of 5 short Mario Party games kind of all stapled together, and Mario Party 5 was the final one for that. So we don't have a ton of Mario Party 5 in there. And I think it's generally because most folks just kind of don't really like Mario Party 5 that much. There is there is a game for Mario Party 5 that hasn't made it up as a VOD yet. It's going to be at least a good couple weeks before it comes up because I got a big backlog. But so not a ton happening there, but we have the links if you want to check those out. So Sonic Dream Collection versus Mario Party 5. All right, after this we have the Jackbox Party Pack 4 versus Sonic and the Fallen Star. So Jackbox Party Pack 4 is one that we played a couple times. We didn't play it a ton. We played it for our 4,000th Let's Play special back when we were doing like special episodes, like at least I think every 1,000 and sometimes every 500 Let's Play videos. Should really get back into doing that sometime soon. I guess our 12,500th is probably coming up pretty quickly, which doesn't sound like a very important number, but it is an eighth of 100,000, which we're never going to get to. I don't know. Maybe 13,000 will do something there. But it was one that we played a couple times. We played it, like I said, for the 4,000 Let's Play special. We played it for a Patreon hangout one time. Jeff and the Sunday Crew played it among a bunch of others, and then we played it as part of Jackathon. I would say it was kind of a weaker entry. Just looking at it now, and it's funny because I know that for Jackathon we also ranked the packs as well as the games within the packs. 4, just looking at it now, is one that doesn't really interest me a ton, especially based on the options we have now. We have Fibbage 3, which is for sure the best part of the pack in my opinion. But also we now have Fibbage 4, so we don't really need Fibbage 3. There's also Monster Seeking Monster, which is sort of a dating themed social deduction game, which is kind of interesting. It's okay. I've never been big for a social deduction game, so it's kind of like whatever there. There was also bracketeering, which is actually at this point in hindsight, I think bracketeering is the best part of Jackbox 4, because nothing has really captured bracketeering yet, which is you have a bunch of brackets, very much like what we're doing here, and you are not knowing you will get a prompt for something to include, but then the actual competition is a different thing, and everyone votes on what they think the best entry is between two that are competing. And then there's like blind and double blind rounds where it's just like put whatever down. It's a really interesting thing there. It is best played with a very large audience. I think the larger the audience, the better, because ties don't happen as easily. No one person has like a lot of control over the end vote. There's also Civic Doodle, the art game for that one, which is like, it's fine. I'm not like super in love with it or anything. And then what the hell's the last one? My lighting's going to change while I do this. Oh, Survive the Internet, which is one that I think some people are into. I don't like it very much. I think it's kind of a weird... It's kind of both boring and hard to play, if that makes any sense. You're coming up with... It's essentially in the like blind prompt category of games, where you're coming up with prompts that involve news stories, headlines, social media posts, image captions, but you don't know what you're captioning yet, or you don't know what you're describing yet, and it's okay. It's just kind of a weak entry for me, but we've played it at least a couple times. There's plenty that you can go back and look at for those. Sonic and the Fallen Star, on the other hand, that's a game made by, I believe it was Stardrop is the name of the collective that did that. I say collective, I think it was like mostly done by like 2 or 3 people. Very, very cool Sonic fan game. I don't know if they built a fresh engine for it or if they were using an existing one, but the sprite work is extremely expressive. Really cool art design on it. Really good music. Holly Taylor did an incredible job. Honestly, excellent fan game. So far, it might be my favorite Sonic fan game. Like, no disrespect to Sonic Triple Trouble 16-bit, but I think Fallen Star just has a little edge on that style. But both really, really good. Covered it, pretty quickly because it wasn't a huge game or anything, but it was a lot of fun. There was a sequel in development for a little while called Sonic and the Moonbase, but it wound up being canceled. I do hope that at some point they get back together to do, another Sonic game, because I would love to see more from these guys. Really good stuff. Both of these, pretty short run things. You can check them both out, but Jackbox Party Pack 4 versus Sonic and the Fallen Star. All right, after this, we have Tails Sky Patrol versus Phantasy Star 2. Tails Sky Patrol, one that we did for the Supersonic Let's Play. It's another one of those weird Tails in the starring role type games. This one is an auto-scrolling... I guess you could call it a shoot-'em-up. It's not really a shoot-'em-up, but it's a side-scrolling game where you play as Tails, who is flying... I'm trying to remember if you have I think you have like an energy meter that you have to keep up so that Tails can keep flying, but you have a ring that you use in a similar style to the ring from, I was going to call it the Combi ring, but I think that's the wrong one. But the ring that you use to stay with your partner in Knuckles Chaotix, similar idea to that, because you use that to latch onto things, and you can like whip Tails around and spin him around stuff, hit enemies, knock them over, and you're trying to take on the evil witch cart, who it turns out is a witch in a cart at the end of the game. Very, very short game. I think it took us like an hour to beat, but it's kind of a cute little thing. Phantasy Star 2 is one we played for the Sega Genesis Mini 2 series. I think it's one that we had Peter for. I'm trying to remember at what point Peter was jumping in on games. This might have been pretty early into when he was around, because this would have been like 2022 or like around for physical, like in-person ones. Because I'm trying to remember when because he was doing like remote recordings with like Jeff and them for a while before, but I don't remember when he first was like here for them. I don't remember. Regardless, though, Phantasy Star 2, it's an RPG. It's from very far back. It is a little bit clunky, even like it's hard to really gauge early RPGs, especially like I'm a big Dragon. I have to always remind myself to say Dragon Quest because when I entered the series, it was just Dragon Warrior on the NES, and that game is maybe the stiffest RPG experience you could imagine. Like if you want to use stairs, you have to stand on top of the stair tile, hit A, and then select stairs. Like it's a clunky experience in its original form. This isn't that bad, but it's not that far off. Very old RPG. It would probably take a long time to get through. And it reminded me instantly of the one time I played Phantasy Star, the original Phantasy Star, in high school, and I couldn't even get out of the starting town. I could not figure it out for the life of me. So interesting game, a little slow, but we do have our coverage of that. It's a 1-episode thing, so both pretty short. But yeah, Tales Sky Patrol versus Phantasy Star 2. Then we have Sonic Labyrinth versus Elemental Master. Sonic Labyrinth is one that we played for the Supersonic Let's Play, and I think also for Sonic Weekathon 2 for Game Gear, as well as, Tales Sky Patrol before that. And if I recall correctly, so this is one that I grew up with, and kind of always hated. It's one where you play as Sonic, but his shoes have been stolen and replaced with slow shoes, which mean that Sonic can't really, like, he can spin dash, but he can only like walk at a very slow pace. So you're basically spin dashing everywhere, which means you're very hard to control. Isometric kind of puzzle gameplay. Lots of stuff that you can get hurt on and all that. You're trying to find 3 keys so you can get to the exit and escape the level. But what's interesting is in one level there's a secret door that you can't get through unless you get a key in a very specific way. And even right now, sitting here, having now done it for the Supersonic Let's Play, I went back and replayed the whole game just to get this. I don't remember how you do it. I think you have to like hold a certain direction as you get shot into the air from a cannon earlier on or something. But very strange game. On the flip side, we have Elemental Master. It's another vertical shoot 'em up. You play as a guy, Layden, I think, as you are taking down these monsters that are destroying the world and creating these weird elemental hellscapes and all of that. Cool game. It's kind of hard to gauge a lot of shoot 'em ups from each other once they're in the same genre, but that's just kind of how that goes. It was a pretty okay game. Very hard, which is fine for a shoot 'em up. But yeah, Sonic Labyrinth versus Elemental Master. After that, we have Sonic the Hedgehog Spinball for the Sega Genesis versus B-Livery. Sonic Spinball, I mean, this is another one that's like, we played it for the Supersonic Let's Play. I don't think that I've played it for any of the Sonic Weekathons because it wasn't a game. This one isn't a Game Gear game, and it wasn't one of the ones we did for the original Sonic Week, so it's one of the games that kind of eluded all of that. But it is a very odd to control game, following up Sonic Labyrinth very nicely, where you play essentially pinball with Sonic as the pinball, but you can kind of control him in the air. You can sort of like mush him left or right. There's a little bit of platforming. It's very awkward in that regard. And I think everybody has at least a certain nostalgia for the Toxic Caves level at the start of both the Genesis and Game Gear versions. And then after that, once you get to the what was it, Magma Power or Lava Powerhouse, all of that funness just fades away very quickly. I guess the Lava Powerhouse isn't that bad. It's the machine where shit really kind of hits the wall, and it's like, oh yeah, all right, this isn't all that fun anymore. Tough game. We did get through it. It's a stressful experience, honestly. On the other side, we have B-Livery, which is one we did for Special Delivery. This one is just hard to play in a very literal sense. It was made for Ludum Dare 53, so under Game Jam conditions, no one's expecting you to like fully optimize your game or anything. But the game has if I remember correctly, it's a front-facing auto scroller where you're trying to I think you're trying to collect honey or something. And the reason my memory is so foggy on this is the game uses a lot of 3D assets and doesn't optimize for like memory at all or GPU at all. So it basically didn't play properly when we tried playing it for Special Delivery. I in fact wound up when I was setting this up, I was looking at these another time, and I played Special Delivery again, because why not? It was a cute little game. I wanted to get logos for all of these things to make the thumbnails that you're seeing, because this logo that's up here, we didn't use for a thumbnail. We just had one big special delivery thing. But so I checked the game out again with this computer that I think has been upgraded since then, and it still basically can't run the game. It's kind of amazing, honestly. So didn't have much time there, but that's what we got. Sonic Spinball 16-bit versus B-Livery. After this, we have The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess HD versus Mario Tennis Aces. Twilight Princess HD is a very interesting one because it was a single episode that we played as I think the lead up to our 100th episode of Breath of the Wild. The reason for that was there was a very special thing you could do with Twilight Princess HD, which was if you played through the game and then got to the is it the Pit of Trials? I'm trying to remember what the gauntlet in that game was, because for a while a lot of Zelda games had a special gauntlet you could go through that was a number of levels that you could descend through to get prizes and things. I think Majora's Mask was the first to do it. Majora's Mask had it, Wind Waker had it, Twilight Princess had it. I don't recall whether Skyward Sword did, but at the very least after that we kind of stopped having those. Breath of the Wild and Twilight Princess went different directions with kind of like challenges like those. But so in this one, when you get to the end of your set of trials, and in this case, you had to do it entirely as Wolf Link. You couldn't do it as Human Link. If you had a Wolf Link amiibo, at the very end, you could tap it on the screen, and whatever stats you had in your game at the time, you could then, in Breath of the Wild, summon a Wolf Link type wolf. I don't think it's supposed to specifically be Link, but you essentially get a Twilight Wolf situation that has all of the health that Wolf Link had. Not like how much health he had left after the battle, but like his max hearts. So you would want to have as many hearts as you can before doing a challenge. But then essentially anytime you tap the Wolf Link amiibo, I forget if it's like every day, every hour, whatever, you can summon them again. You get a wolf with that much health in Breath of the Wild. So we did that as a one-off special, kind of going through all that. And then the follow-up in Breath of the Wild involved summoning the Wolf Link that we had from there. So that was kind of a fun way to, ring that in. Mario Tennis Aces is a game that we played as part of a Mario sports tournament that Jeff set up as part of the D-Pad's Supersoft Extra Life charity marathon stream back in 2022. I think it was myself, Jeff, Dave, and Sarah that were competing in this because we did sort of a little bracket style tournament there with each of us doing like best of three sets, I think, to determine the winner of that event. It's fine. It's a Mario Tennis game. There's not usually a lot to say about it, but at least there's more in Mario Tennis Aces than there was in Mario Tennis Ultra Smash. So there was some stuff to do there. But yeah, so not a lot for either of these. They were both very short experiences, but Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess HD versus Mario Tennis Aces. Okay, more time has passed, and now I'm a little bit sweaty, so I apologize. Next up, we have we've done this this is now the fourth recording session for this. It's been kind of a wild ride this last couple weeks. Next, we have Mega Man Legends 2 versus Digimon World Next Order. So Mega Man Legends 2, obviously part of the Mega Let's Play. We also included in this the kind of demo episode 1 portion of the game. But we covered that a while back. I want to say Lindsay and Ben were there for most of that. It was very interesting because I had never actually played Legends 2 before, whereas I'd played Mega Man 64 a ton. So it was very interesting to see how the story kind of continued. And as far as the current releases in the franchise are concluded, I guess, or got cliff hung. It was an interesting time. They add a lot more story and lore compared to the first game, which is a little bit more cryptic in the sense that you're kind of showing up in that one with a more established Mega Man and role that you then realize there's much more going on for Mega Man and Catalog's Island under the surface. Whereas in Legends 2, now you know there's a mystery going on and you're hunting the mother lode and you're trying to find out the secret of Roll's, parents, what happened to them and all of this stuff, and finding out the real, like, deep history of, like, the Carbons and the Mega Man Juno and Trigger and all of that stuff too. But very interesting game. A lot of cool stuff there. I gotta play it again sometime because a lot of it hasn't really stuck as well as I'd like it to, but still very, very cool. On the flip side, we have Digimon World Next Order, which is one that Dave streamed for a while. I think it's a series of about 8 streams. Open world RPG type thing. We got a lot of those from that era. It's one where you play as, a lot of classic Digimon in there. I guess the classic Digimon still have a ton of staying power in the franchise to this day and all of the recent games, but it looked pretty interesting. And you can do like fusions and training and all of, the evolving and all of that stuff. But yeah, so we got a pretty decent amount of it. I don't know if Dave finished it in the 8 streams or not. I don't know how long the game is. I would imagine it would take more than 8 streams to finish, but I'm not positive on that. But Mega Man Legends 2 versus Digimon World Next Order. Following that, we have Wonder Boy the Dragon's Trap versus Super Street Fighter 2 The New Challengers. Wonder Boy the Dragon's Trap is a fun one where I think our series is labeled as Wonder Girl the Dragon's Trap because for the remake that was made, I guess more of a remaster that was made, you can choose at the beginning whether you want to play as the original male hero or a female hero, and if you play as the female hero, it will change the title screen to Wonder Girl the Dragon's Trap, which I thought was a cute touch. Very cool game. It is functionally just the original game with a very tiny amount of changes. There's an art style change that has all the updated graphics and stuff, or you can play the original, but there's like extra dungeons and things that are in there. I grew up with Wonder Boy and Monster World, and Dragon's Trap is probably the closest in the classic series to that. Even compared with Monster World 4, I think Dragon's Trap is ultimately closer to Wonder Boy and Monster World. So it was very familiar territory for me. We had a great time with that one. We might have had... I'm trying to remember if Dave Lopez was with us for that series. I don't know why that comes to mind. Maybe he was. But it was a fun time. It wasn't like a super long game, but it was a very interesting experience for that. On the flip side, we have Super Street Fighter 2 The New Challengers, which was, at first I had to double check that this was not one of the games that Dave had us play for Punch Dave Hook's Money, but those were all intentionally like weird or bad fighting games, whereas this one is, it's a Street Fighter 2 game, which is so funny that Street Fighter 2 is its own sub-series of games. But I believe this was a port of the arcade game that of the same name, added some new fighters, had some tweaks and adjustments to it. But this was part of the Sega Genesis Mini 2 series. So, it's a Street Fighter game. There's not a lot to say about it very specifically. I don't know the nuances between Street Fighter 2 versions, but we did a one-off, game with that. So it's very easy to check out if you haven't seen it yet. So Wonder Boy the Dragon's Trap versus Super Street Fighter 2, The New Challengers. Following that up, we have Mega Man and Bass versus the Jackbox Party Pack 10. Mega Man and Bass is kind of an interesting one because it's the rare instance in Mega Man of different versions of the game definitely having different play experiences. Generally speaking, for the most part, Mega Man very rarely had different versions of a game. Like the closest that I can even think of off the top of my head would have been Mega Man X3 having a Super Nintendo version and a Saturn version. And like the main difference between them was that the soundtrack on the Saturn version had like CD quality music, and they also had like cutscenes that the Super Nintendo one didn't have. But this is a case where, so the original Mega Man and Bass was released on the Super Famicom, and it was pretty close in line with when Mega Man 7 and 8 came out. But it didn't come to the States at all for a good, I think, 7 or 8 years. And then we got Mega Man and Bass on the Game Boy Advance, widely considered to be a horribly bad, botched version of the game because the screen is crunched way down, but they didn't really account for that when it comes to how the levels are laid out. They didn't really adjust the levels at all. So it is very much a pretty straight port of the game to the game's detriment because you're doing tons of blind jumps. It's way more compressed for boss battles. It's a much harder version of the game. But we did play it. We did get through it back in the day. So like we did ultimately make our way through that, but it was definitely a difficult experience for sure. The Jackbox Party Pack 10 is I think it's not the only one, but it's one of the few. It's the only like modern Jackbox game that we've only played once. We played it as part of Jackathon, and we haven't gone back to it, which is a shame because there's actually some good stuff on there. There's TKO 2, just an expansion on the original TKO. There's Hypnotorious, which I'm not a big fan of that one. It's another kind of social deduction game, but it's one where it was a weird one. I don't really know on that one. There was also Time Jinx, which was very interesting because it was essentially a game show type game, which puts it in line with stuff like You Don't Know Jack. But it's a game show type game where everything is based on time. Like you're trying to order things in time, trying to figure out the years that things happened. It was honestly really cool to do. I actually really, really like that one. I'm trying to remember what the other two games were. I have it pulled up. I'll check. Oh, yes. So Fixie Text is one where you're sort of trying to fix the text that I think it's like you're typing something and then an AI is trying to adjust it, but you're trying to readjust it or something. It wasn't very good. We didn't really like that one too much. Dodo Re Mi is the other one, though, and that one was a very charming game where every person up to 8 picks a bird that has a different instrument, and you kind of perform a song together. And it was honestly kind of nice. It was one of the last things we did in Jackathon, and it was actually a really nice note to go out on. We did a little bit more after that, but it was right near the end, and we were like, oh, this is actually a pretty cool. We didn't think it was going to be that interesting on the way in, but it actually was pretty decent. But yeah, we've only really done that for Jackathon, so you can check that one out. Mega Man and Bass we did a full series on for the Mega Let's Play. So so Mega Man and Bass versus the Jackbox Party Pack 10. After this, we have Super Punch-Out versus Rolling Thunder 2. Super Punch-Out is one we did for the Super NES Classic Edition. It's like the third or fourth Punch-Out game, including the arcade versions. Plays off the original really nicely, but it is ultimately a Punch-Out game. It's kind of hard, to find a unique description for it. We played that just for the one-off. It was a fun time. I'm a big Little Mac stan. On the flip side, we have Rolling Thunder 2, which this one's very weird. It's like a side-scrolling. I mean, it's in some ways it feels like a not very good Contra game. It's just it's a side-scroller, very sluggish, a little stiff, and you're shooting stuff. I think you're like a spy. I think there might be alien stuff going on. I don't really know, to be honest. It was a very weird time. We did it for Sega Genesis Mini 2. Both of these being one-off games, so you can check both of them out to compare, but Super Punch-Out versus Rolling Thunder 2. Then after that, we have Super Mario Run versus Table Tennis. This is going to be a strange one. So Super Mario Run was I believe a one-off video that we did that was essentially just, there was a mobile game. It was I was about to say it's the first. I don't remember. There might have been an Animal Crossing mobile situation before this, but it's a mobile game where you play as Mario in an auto runner and you tap the screen to essentially to jump or to wall jump in order to like avoid obstacles and all of that stuff. You'll like automatically vault some enemies. It's kind of an interesting concept, but in my opinion, the game gets old pretty quick. There's some like online multiplayer type stuff that adds to it, but like it's an okay game. But we did a one-off for it because we're like, oh, let's give that a shot. This is around the time that we did Pokemon Go, if I remember correctly. So we were kind of fiddling around with like mobile games here and there with those like more notable ones, but it was an interesting time nonetheless. Table Tennis was the first of what was supposed to be and will still be, I'll get back to this in a second, the first episode in a series called The Complete Odyssey, which was essentially a series. I'm literally looking at something for the Odyssey right now, which was it was a series to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Magnavox Odyssey, which was released in 1972. It was the first home console system. And as celebration for this, and the timing worked out super perfectly, the first video for the series, we played Table Tennis, which was card 1 for the Odyssey, because the games in there are on, it's very weird. There's a set of about a dozen cards, and each of them has one or more games on them that you can play depending on the mode of the system. And table tennis is essentially Pong. And when I say essentially, I mean it actually technically predates Pong, but it's a tennis game. It's a ping pong game. When I said was and still is, we are still intending to return to this. I've got some plans put together for that. I've been missing one game for a while now, and I keep every now and then looking to see if I can find it. I've got a few good leads, but we are returning to that. Not super soon, but you will be seeing it again. And also not by the time this tournament is over. But table tennis was the first for the complete Odyssey. We were going to play every single game on the Odyssey for the 50th anniversary, which was 2022. So it's been a little bit since then, obviously. But we played it as, I believe, our 10,000th Let's Play video on the channel. Speaking of, how we did Jackbox Party Pack 4 as our 4,000th Let's Play, this was our 10,000th. Fun story. We actually, I think, are still selling. We have like posters and shirts and stuff featuring what the design I've called Myriad Memories, which is the first 10,000 Let's Play video thumbnails in a big 100 by 100 grid. If that is something that interests you, you can head to, the D-pad store at the URL right there, and you can check it out. I'm fiddling around with maybe switching stores, but for the time being, that's where you can find it. What a stupid thing to inject into that. Table tennis was fun. It was very neat. It's, I've always had kind of a soft spot for the pre-NES days of home consoles. I owned an Atari 2600 growing up. And, getting the Odyssey was somewhat familiar territory. I'd never played an Odyssey before, but I was familiar with those kinds of games, Intellivision, ColecoVision, all of those things. So it was very neat to bring that back. And we had played Pong prior to that for the games as well. So it wasn't even the first proper retro, or I guess at this point vintage. Would stuff from the 70s and early 80s at this point be vintage consoles? And retro is now everything from the NES up to, I don't know, at least the GameCube era, right? I don't know how far into the 2000s retro goes yet. Maybe all the way to the end. Who knows? But anyway, Super Mario Run versus table tennis. So next up after this, we have Sega Sonic Cosmo Fighter Galaxy Patrol versus Spatter. So another Sega Sonic game, but Sega Sonic Cosmo Fighter Galaxy Patrol is, so essentially it was an arcade game, a really, really, really basic shoot 'em up for very young children, that apparently was not just released in Japan, but also in Australia. I didn't know that until literally I looked this up, for making a thumbnail for it, specifically because we played it as the intro to another game. But yeah, it's a very, very short little experience. And there's another game, I think, which, we'll talk about it actually very shortly in 7 more matches. I'll bring it up then. But cute little game. We played it as part of the intro, like I said, so we didn't get a lot of time with it, but it is a game that exists. Spatter, not to be confused with Splatterhouse 2, which is also on this list, despite the fact that Spatter sounds like blood spatter. Very basic for young children type arcade style game. You play a character on, I think, a tricycle, and you're trying to evade capture by other characters on bikes and trikes, and you can swerve into fences to knock them away from the other side and also dodge things coming at you. I don't know what the idea of this game is. We played it for a while too, but it was kind of hard. Interesting game. We played it as part of the Sega Genesis Mini 2 series, but there's a one-off video, so it'd be easy to check out. Sega Sonic Cosmo Fighter Galaxy Patrol versus Spatter. All right, next up we have Pokemon Go versus Sonic Origins Plus. Pokemon Go, which has been in the news lately, is one that we covered as a one-off when the game first launched. We actually did a surprising amount without having to leave our apartment, which is where all our recording stuff was. But I don't think Pokemon Go is a game that needs any explanation. Like I said, it was just a one-off thing. We were just kind of checking out what the game was all about. I wound up playing Pokemon Go for a good chunk of that year, but then the following year I kind of fell off and I never really went back. Based off things we've learned since then, I'm kind of glad that I haven't gone back. Sonic Origins Plus, we played as part of the Supersonic Let's Play. So it is essentially a large DLC for Sonic Origins, which added Amy Rose to Sonic 1, 2, 3, and Sonic CD, or Sonic 1, 2, 3, and Knuckles and Sonic CD, as well as adding Knuckles as a playable character in Sonic CD. I think he was already added to Sonic 1 in the collection. He just wasn't in Sonic CD. As well as the Game Gear games were added to it, which essentially just stapled on the, I think, Sonic Mega Collection was one that had all of the Game Gear games. I'm trying to remember. I have that. It was on the GameCube. But all Game Gear games were added as well. And we cleared the kind of sort of achievement board. It was kind of an achievement board. Completed an illustration, and the end result is a cheat code menu that got added into stuff. But it was nice to go back. It was a fun excuse to play through the classic games again and play them as Amy, so we could kind of figure out how that was going to work. I was kind of expecting her to be essentially the same as Sonic Advance, in which you basically couldn't damage anything without using your hammer, and you were essentially always vulnerable otherwise, but I don't think that's the case. I think when she jumps, she just has a super huge, because she swings her hammer, so you just have a humongous hitbox. But still a pretty interesting time. So Pokemon Go versus Sonic Origins Plus. From there, we have Secret of Mana versus Herzog Zwei. Secret of Mana is one that, honestly, I'm kind of surprised we didn't wind up doing a whole series of, but it was part of the Super NES Classic Edition. I think we did. The only reason we didn't do it is because we were planning on doing one for Mario RPG. But if you're not familiar, it's sort of like, it's kind of like if you fused, people are gonna get mad at this analogy, but it's what I'm rolling with. It's sort of like if you fused Chrono Trigger with A Link to the Past. It's sort of an action RPG from a top-down perspective. Classic Square Enix RPG type storyline and aesthetics and all of that, but with a more of an active approach in terms of the actual fighting and such. I think we only played like half an hour, maybe an hour of the game for it as a one-off episode, but it's one that I would love to go back to sometime. Herzog Zwei is a top-down, I think I would call it a tactical RPG. You play as a character in this transforming mech who can either march on the ground or turn into a jet and fly around. You're trying to assault each other's base while keeping your own safe. Not really my cup of tea. I was never a big StarCraft guy, but it's an option. It was part of the Sega Genesis Mini 2 collection there. Also a one-off, so both of these are very easy to check out. So Secret of Mana versus Herzog Zwei. All right, after that, we have the Jackbox Party Pack 3 versus Kirby's Dream Buffet. Jackbox 3 was one we played a lot when it was out. And part of it was because we hadn't played Jackbox Party Pack games before that, so it got a lot of mileage out of us, but it was also a really strong pack, in my opinion. You had the original TKO, you had the original Trivia Murder Party, you had Guespionage, which was an interesting one because it had a lot of the aesthetics of bracketeering, which is interesting. But you essentially have a prompt, and then one person tries to answer it's like a percentage of what percentage of people blah blah blah, and they guess a percentage, and then everyone else chooses whether they think the real answer is higher or lower, and if it's much higher or much lower, and then you find out the real answer. Everyone gets points. Pretty interesting setup. Fakin' It, which is a social deduction game. I didn't like this one at all. Did I miss one? I think I missed one. What was the other one? Oh no. What was the other one? Oh, my mouse is escaping me. What was the other one? Oh, Quiplash 2. Quiplash 2, TKO, and Trivia Murder Party all in one game. And honestly, Guespionage was pretty interesting too. So pretty strong showing there. We did this for a bunch of stuff. I think we played it as part of our 10,000 subscriber stream. Sorry, our 2,000. Oh, we played it for our 2,000 subscriber stream. We played it for our 3,000 subscriber stream, which was also for our 6th birthday, our 6th anniversary stream. We played it for our 7,000 subscriber stream, and we played it for our 10,000 subscriber stream, as well as just randomly playing it in 2021. I think it was part of Jeff and the Sunday Cruise, just party pack night. We also played it as part of Special Delivery, and then we played it as part of Jackathon. I think it's the most individual, distinct plays of a game that we've done so far. We got a ton of mileage out of it, and it's still really good. I think I'd be willing to pull that one out just about any time. Kirby's Dream Buffet is the first of 2 Fall Guys clones that we've played on the channel. The other one being Sonic Rumble, now Sonic Rumble Party. But Kirby's Dream Buffet is literally, it's essentially Kirby Fall Guys, minus some of the mechanics of Fall Guys. You essentially turn it into a ball, and you're rolling down a massive like food thing in order to get to the end. I think you eat like a giant strawberry. Maybe it's whipped cream. It's been a little while, but we tried to include Lindsay on this, and the end result was a super like laggy, jaggy video because just in fairness, the problem we were having was that our internet at home was acting up. We were having actually a major issue with our internet provider at the time. And so the video was like a mess. It was honestly really bad. I'm going to be jumping back into it for Nightmare in the Dreamy Let's Play at some point in the future, but obviously that's not going to come into play here. But it was an interesting time. I also didn't really have a ton of fun with that game, if I'm being really honest. But either way, the Jackbox Party Pack 3 versus Kirby's Dream Buffet. Then after that, we have Flicky versus Crusader of Senti. I think that's how you pronounce it, Senti. So Flicky, I was actually describing this to someone recently. It's a very, very, very arcade-style game where you play as a Flicky of, at this point, Sonic the Hedgehog fame, trying to evade capture by, like, cats and stuff. There's a whole genre of arcade games that are just you on platforms with stairs and ladders trying to avoid stuff. Flicky is one of those. We played it as the intro to, I want to say Sonic 3D Blast, but I could be mistaken. We didn't play it for very long, but it was kind of it was an okay title. There wasn't a ton going on, but it was nice for a short couple minutes there. I could see myself pumping a couple quarters into an arcade if they happen to have that, you know. Crusader of Senti for the Sega Genesis Mini 2. We wound up playing that for a little bit. It falls also into that action RPG kind of genre. I'm trying to recall whether that was the game whose sequel wound up in showing up in like the Saturn Return series or something, but I would have to go back and look for that. Another one that's just kind of, it's tricky with these action RPGs because you want to play enough of it. You want to play, the amount we can play for that series is never enough to really sate, that interest in like, oh, what is this game? I want to check it out a little bit more. Maybe we'll go back to it someday. Who knows? One day we'll probably have a big poll for like, hey, what are some games that we've played in the past that we should revisit in some capacity? But either way, Flicky versus Crusader of Senti. All right, after that, we have Mega Man Battle and Chase versus Persona 4 Golden. So Mega Man Battle and Chase, it's a game we played as part of the Mega Let's Play. It's a racing game. I think it's the only racing game in the Mega Man franchise. But essentially, you're playing as either Mega Man or Roll or one of the Robot Masters or what have you, racing around in a souped-up vehicle or in Mega Man and Bass's instances on Rush or Treble. And you're trying to just beat each other in races. It feels, it kind of falls in a very similar ballpark of like Sonic Drift in terms of being that form of non-kart-based mascot racer. You know what I mean? It's kind of interesting. All of the Robot Masters have their own storylines that they're trying to fulfill. There's reasons they're there. And it was okay. It was fine. Racing games are usually not really my thing. But it wasn't too bad. It's certainly not the worst racing game experience that we've had on the channel. Persona 4 Golden. This is one that I streamed fairly recently. I think it was 2023 into 2024. And actually at some point, not super soon, but soon-ish, I'm probably going to do Persona 5 now that 6 has been announced. But Persona 4 Golden was one that I played over the course of, I think, a year, maybe a year and a half. And very strong departure from Persona 3, which, was all about, I mean, regardless, it doesn't super matter what like the themes were in the sense of this tournament, but I enjoyed myself quite a bit with Persona 4 Golden. I think it probably went. I think I had a better time generally with it. Not that I disliked Persona 3, but I also had a better idea what to expect of a Persona game at that point, and I think that kind of changed how I approached it a bit. But yeah, that one it was a pretty long series. It'd be pretty hard to check out in full, but I recommend if you're into Persona, it's a pretty cool series, and I think I had a pretty okay time with it, and seemed like people were excited to be there and hang for it. So hopefully that'll be the case for Persona 5 when I get around to that too. But either way, Mega Man Battle and Chase versus Persona 4 Golden. Then after that, we have Pokemon Ultra Sun versus Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. So Pokemon Ultra Sun was, unfortunately, it got cut off, before it really got to get going, but it was intended to be a non-Nuzlocke, low stakes, no stakes run of Pokemon Ultra Sun. And the reason for this was, so John and I were running a padlock of Pokemon Sun and Moon, and before we were done, they announced Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, which we found pretty annoying because the marketing for it essentially made it look like, rather than a third game that was kind of added on there, it made it seem like these were the finished versions, which meant that Sun and Moon non-Ultra were unfinished versions. So that was kind of weird. So Ben and Lindsay kind of tag teamed Pokemon Ultra Sun and got, I think, 15, 16 episodes in, and then just we never really wound up going back to it. And I think, for a while there was a single episode that we accidentally held on to. I say accidentally because for a while I was just like, I'm not going to put up one episode on a Monday. I'll wait until we record more and then I'll put that up. And then there just weren't any more. So like years later, I put that up as its own thing just for the sake of having it be online. So that was kind of an interesting run. I will be playing Pokemon Ultra Moon for a Genlock somewhere down the line. I probably won't get to that for like a good 2 years, but keep your eyes peeled, I suppose. Ultimate MVC 3. This was kind of an interesting one. The intent in the Mega Let's Play was to play Marvel vs. Capcom 3 and then come around to Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. But I want to say, and I bought MVC 3. I think the problem was that it wasn't, so PlayStation has like a lot of weird issues when it comes to copy protection, and some older games just don't function properly for recording. So the end result was, rather than play MVC 3 and then play Ultimate MVC 3 to show off the differences, we essentially just played 1 week of Ultimate MVC 3 where we played the material that would have just been in MVC 3, not just MVC 3, the material that MVC 3 had. And then the second week was material that MVC 3 didn't have, which was more of the focus on the Ultimate side of things. It was kind of weird. I wasn't really happy with that situation. I was fine with the end product of the videos. I don't have any problem with that. I was more upset because I was like, I really wanted to cover the actual MVC 3, but the tech side of things was kind of making that impossible. We literally spent hours trying to get that running. So it was kind of a bummer when that didn't work out properly and we just abandoned it and moved on to other things. But either way, Ultimate MVC 3 was actually a pretty decent series for another fighting game. But that's how it goes. So Pokemon Ultra Sun versus Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Then after that, we have Waku Waku Sonic Patrol Car versus Streets of Rage 3. So Waku Waku Sonic Patrol Car is the other game I was talking about or alluding to when we were talking about Sega Sonic Cosmo Fighter Galaxy Patrol. ACAB includes Sonic. Sorry, guys. But yeah, in this one, you're playing as Sonic in a police car chasing Robotnik, trying to stop him. Another one made for very, very young children. This was also one we played as the intro to something else. It was also only released in Japan. There was no English version for it whatsoever. But it was one that we played at the start of a series. and then moved on to something else. Again, this was like a few minutes long of a game. I think at the end it gave you stars based on how well you did. There's not a lot else to say about it. Streets of Rage 3, I believe this one was one that we played for the Sega Genesis Mini 2. Also, not a lot to say here. It's a Streets of Rage game, so it's a side-scrolling fighter. We played it for one episode. I know Peter was there for this. And it reminded me the whole time of Cadillacs and Dinosaurs because of the health bars and how they were laid out. But, yeah, not a lot to say here. We're kind of blazing through this one. But Waku Waku Sonic Patrol Car versus Streets of Rage 3. After that, we have Sonic the Fighters versus Devi and P. Sonic the Fighters will be easy to get into. So this was a game we played for the Supersonic Let's Play, where you play as Sonic and his merry band of friends. We also played it for Punch Dave Hook's Money. But it's essentially Virtua Fighter, but starring Sonic characters, to the point where there's a, I think, technically unused character in one of the two games. I forget which, but Honey the Cat has a human version in one of the Virtua Fighter games. It's odd. It's sort of one of those arena fighter games where you kind of rotate around each other as your 3D element. Kind of tough unless you get lucky and you have one of the characters who can stun lock everybody, which is kind of nice. The one version of 3D Fang that actually got to stick around because the Sonic Extreme game never got finished, which would have had Fang as one of the bosses. On the other side, we have Deviant P, a Sega Genesis Mini 2 entry on the list that is so hard to describe. You have Little Angel. You have it's sort of like Arkanoid or Breakout, where you've got paddles, but you have paddles on the top and bottom of the screen. You have angels that are ascending, that in some cases, but I think not all, you're trying to catch with the top paddle. And then you've got little demons that are descending, and sometimes you want to hit them with the bottom paddle to use them to attack stuff, and other times you don't. This game, I think, was all in Japanese, so we didn't really have a lot to go off of. Very cryptic and weird. I think Sarah was there with me for that one. Yeah, I don't have a lot that I can say about this one. This one's weird. I would say just go check out the video, to be dead honest, but Sonic the Fighters versus Deviant P. Next up, we have No Man's Sky versus Special Delivery. No Man's Sky, we played as our 2500th Let's Play video. It's weird that we're getting so many of our milestone videos to show up in this, by the way. In this specific heat, I don't know how that happened. But it was Ben and I don't know if anyone else was there, but at the very least it was Ben and I playing No Man's Sky when it was basically brand new. And if you played No Man's Sky prior to 2 years after it came out, you probably have had some weirdness with No Man's Sky. This is a video that very famously ended with us. So there was a point where we were noticing that there was geometry on the map that wasn't loading correctly, and we're like, oh, that's a shame, the whole texture is missing. What's this all about? So we go to a hill where we were seeing hills that were bisected, chunks of hills that were floating, and then the bottom of the hill underneath, and a huge gap in between. And we're like, oh, the geometry just isn't getting textured, so it's just whatever. So we went to go climb one of these to dick around and discovered that no, the geometry just didn't load at all, and we fell through the map, and we just kept falling, and it seemed like we were going to fall forever. And then all of a sudden we landed, but we landed in essentially the planet's acid ocean and proceeded to, I think we died eventually. It took a while, but it was a very, very strange, one of the strangest endings to a video we've ever had. On the flip side, we have Special Delivery, which we played as part of Special Delivery, the charity stream that we did. That was the Ludum Dare 53 games, which were all themed around delivery. We named the series before, we named the event before the games were voted on. It makes sense that someone would call their game Special Delivery because, we also went the same direction. But Special Delivery is a game where you control I guess you could say you control the warehouse, but there's a cardboard box that you're trying to navigate through a maze. You're trying to pick up items along the way and eventually get it to the very end of this whole maze. And you had little pistons that would activate, that would either extend or retract. You had little grabby claws that could grab the box and stuff. It was a charming little game. It looked really sharp too because the box was definitely rendered in 3D, but had a shader on it that made it look like pixel art. So it looked like this really crisp, like 8-bit cardboard box. But it was visibly like it was definitely an actual 3D object getting pushed around. But like I said, very charming little game. You can beat the game in like 10, 15 minutes, but it was a grand old time. So No Man's Sky versus Special Delivery. All right, after this, we have Chow Adventure versus Mansion of Hidden Souls. Chow Adventure was kind of a strange one. So this was part of the Supersonic Let's Play, and we essentially just played, because there were VMU ROMs that you could load into like Dreamcast emulators and stuff, and it was kind of the only way that we could do this. But we played a VMU ROM essentially, or ISO, I don't know which it would qualify as, of Chow Adventure to explore the game modes, but it's just really difficult to actually get that thing working correctly without like real hardware. And so we kind of just dicked around for a little while. There wasn't a lot of meat to that video. I'm going to be real with you. We learned a few things before we got to Chow Adventure 2. But it's essentially a partner game to, so Chow Adventure is what the Dreamcast games had as your like partner game to the Chow Garden in Sonic Adventure, as compared to the Tiny Chow Garden on the Game Boy Advance for Sonic Adventure Director's Cut, the GameCube version of that. But yeah, you could play with your Chow. It essentially turned your Chow into a Tamagotchi in the traditional sense. So there were some activities you could do there. We didn't get into much of them because our setup didn't give us a lot of access to that, but that's how Chow Adventure works. Mansion of Hidden Souls is sort of like if you were trying to play Resident Evil in the Myst engine. Like you were essentially in a point and click environment, but doing like horror scary stuff. We spent most of our time having no fucking clue what we were doing and kind of wandering around. I think that's the game that had the butterfly motif going on. It's a game that honestly, wouldn't necessarily not be worth another look one of these days, but very strange one as part of Sega Genesis Mini 2. What a weird matchup. Chow Adventure versus Mansion of Hidden Souls. So you know how I mentioned that Battle and Chase wasn't like our worst racing experience on the channel? That would go to one of our next competitors. We have Sonic Drift versus Banjo-Kazooie. Sonic Drift was part of the Supersonic Let's Play, as well as Sonic Weekathon 2 for Game Gear. And I think this is one where John and I had like low-key an actual argument on mic, and it was just short enough that it didn't make sense to edit it out. It's very awkward. I probably should have just axed a big chunk of that and come out of it, but we essentially were just trying to play through each of the Grand Prix, and we lost all three of them, and then we did one more episode trying the first one. I don't even remember whether we won or lost, and then we moved on. In Sonic Weekathon 2 for Game Gear, the goal was we have to beat all of these games, which for Sonic Drift was not easy and not very fun. Same goes for Sonic Drift 2. Actually, I say that, and now that I'm thinking about it, I feel like Sonic Drift 1 was actually not that bad in the long run. Sonic Drift 2, I think, was like miserable to try to actually beat because you had, I think, 6 Grand Prix instead of 3, and you had to like, there was more to it. I think it didn't consider that you had beaten it properly unless you'd taken first in every race or something. I don't really remember, but Sonic Drift was a weird time. Banjo-Kazooie was one half of our 12th anniversary marathon stream, D12 Reach for the Stars, which was one that half of it was Super Mario 64, 120 stars, half of it was Banjo-Kazooie, all the jiggies. This one was kind of neat. I mean, I say kind of neat. It was a great time. I love Banjo-Kazooie. It was a lot of fun to be able to do that one along with Mario 64 and get two of the like most classic N64 platforming, and to a certain extent less so with Mario, but still qualifies, but of a collectathon in there. We played it for around 12 hours, might have been 12, 13. And Yeah, it was a really good time. It was a great great anniversary stream too. So Sonic Drift versus Banjo-Kazooie. Next after that, we have Mario Kart 8 Deluxe versus Afterburner 2. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is essentially, I mean, it was Mario Kart 8 for the Wii U, but souped up for the Switch. And I don't think Nintendo had any idea how well Mario Kart 8 Deluxe was going to do, because all of a sudden everybody was playing it, everybody was buying it, and they got the green light essentially to produce a colossal amount of DLC for that game, to the point where, because the original, the at launch version of 8 Deluxe, really, I don't recall being very much more than the original Mario Kart 8. It was just kind of them re-releasing it onto the Switch. But then they started adding tons of characters, tons of tracks, tons of everything. And it wound up being humongous. It was a huge seller on the Switch. We only played it for a little while. We were mostly just checking out like what kind of new stuff was in there, but it was still a fun time. It was about the same length of series as our original Mario Kart 8 run, hilariously enough. Afterburner 2 was one of our Sega Genesis mini games. This was one where it's like a fighter pilot game, kind of a, from behind shoot 'em up type situation. And it made my heart want to explode, because stuff was fucking going on all over the place, and the ground is flying at you. We only played it for a single video, but it was still just like, holy shit. Really interesting experience on that, if a little bit overstimulating, but we got the one video for that if you want to check it out. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe versus Afterburner 2. All right, after that we have Kirby's Dream Land 2 versus Mario Party 3. Kirby's Dream Land 2 is one that we played as part of the Dreamy Let's Play. It's basically like, let's take Kirby's Dream Land, the original one, and soup it up so that it feels more like Kirby's Adventure. Abilities are in there. There's a stage select, like overworld type situation, but it also adds the animal buddies, Rick, Koo, and Kine, who wound up sticking around for a bunch of games after that. Really interesting stuff in the way that it let you kind of mess with Kirby's but his copy abilities, and how they all acted differently with the animal buddies. That's something they would take forward to like Kirby's Dream Land 3, and then the ability blending in Kirby 64, as well as I think Kirby Star Allies was one that also did like ability blending stuff too. But really interesting stuff with that. It was a lot of fun to be able to play that on the channel. It was one that I grew up with. Even if it gets a little bit difficult to get the rainbow drops in later stages, it was still a pretty solid time. And I think we had a fun time with that, so that was pretty cool. Mario Party 3 is one that we played for Mario Party Madness. This was actually the first game that I played for Mario Party Madness when I played with no, sorry, it's not the first one. It's the second one that I played, I believe. What's funny is this was one that half the time I played Mario Party 3, which I think was an N64 game, and it's the one that gets the most mods. Half the time I played Mario Party 3, it's been in an instance where we were playing a modded map. I think in 2 instances it was an attempt to do the Great Deku Tree map, which had an interesting situation where at the end of you essentially couldn't buy a star until you got all the way back around to the beginning, and it was in a set position. But when you got there, you could buy any number of stars you wanted, so long as you had the money for it all at once. So it incentivized getting shitloads of cash and then getting back to the beginning. Actually, that might have been one time, and the other time we didn't, because I recall someone backing up to pick up stars and then moving forward again. But I don't remember. There was also a Ganon's Castle map that we played once that also had a lot of like crazy star stuff going on there, but it was a really good time. I would highly recommend checking those out. Kirby's Dream Land 2 versus Mario Party 3. From there we have Contra 3 The Alien Wars versus Lightning Force Quest for the Dark Star. Contra, this one's going to be weird and short. Contra 3, it's a Contra game. A lot of side-scrolling, shoot-'em-up type situations, but like on the ground, like run and gun, jump and shoot type stuff. It's a tough game. There's a few points where you actually do like a top-down, like almost Mode 7 kind of situation, which was very interesting. But it is ultimately, it's a Contra game. There's not a lot to say about it because all the Contra games do kind of feel very similar to one another, which is, makes it easy to know if you're going to like one. But we played it. We had a good time with it, honestly. It was part of the Super NES Classic Edition. Lightning Force Quest for the Dark Star. Lightning, not lightning like kraka, lightning, but like lightening, like lightening a room or lightening the load. Very odd choice. I wonder if that is a typo in the game title itself, but it's a really intense side-scrolling actual shoot-'em-up as the genre. You're in a ship and you're shooting stuff, but it really feels like it's pushing the limits of the Genesis a little bit. It was a Sega Genesis Mini 2 entry, and I'm realizing, it was a Genesis. I'm like, some of those games were for the Sega CD, so I just want to double check. But there's a lot of instances of what I tend to in my head think of as treasure game bosses, which is a lot of bosses that are composed of a lot of individual sprites that are kind of chained together and doing things. You see it a lot in like Gunstar Heroes and Dynamite Headdy, which is why I'm saying it reminds me of like treasure games. But like, we're gonna have a big thing that kind of curls up on itself, so it's got a circle, and it's got another one that rotates around, another one rotates around slower, so it kind of has this like curling sort of thing that it's doing and all that. Really interesting setup for it, but I was like a good shoot 'em up, so I was having a blast with that. But yeah, so you can check both of those out. They're both one-off episodes there. Contra 3: The Alien Wars and Lightning Force Quest for the Dark Star. After that, we have Blue Sphere versus Shining Force 2. Blue Sphere is, so what happens when you plug Sonic 1 into the Sonic and Knuckles cartridge is you get essentially an functionally unlimited version of Blue Sphere where so what happens is if you plug any game that isn't Sonic 2 or Sonic 3 into Sonic and Knuckles, normally you get a single procedurally generated Blue Sphere stage. It's essentially the special stage from Sonic 3 and Knuckles, where it uses like the ROM header as the seed to generate a map. And the idea being that you have 4 quadrants for the special stage map, and which quadrants you get in each of those 4 sections is dependent on the seed that generates each of those 4 things. For Sonic the Hedgehog 1, what it instead does is it gives you essentially access to every single possible one. So you can either play in sequence, where I don't know if it literally generates a seed based off of an entry of 1 and then 2 and then 3, but it does let you sequentially play through all of these, or you can enter a seed, I believe, in order to play different things there. It'd be kind of interesting if there was ever a project to try to get as many possible stages of that done, not as an individual person, but essentially anybody who wanted to grab a previously unplayed level and put it up there. That make actually for a pretty good project. Maybe that's something I'm going to look into. There are billions of these levels, so it's not like it's a thing that could ever be completed, but it'd be very interesting to see how far people could get. Reminds me very much conceptually of like the Mario Maker 0% team and organized thing there. On the other side, we have Shining Force 2. I grew up a lot with Shining Force. I forget, by the way, how far into Blue Sphere we played. I think we did like 10-ish levels, and then we seeded one, and then we were done. There was never a way for that to end. But Shining Force 2 is a game that was played as part of, it actually might have been the last entry in the Sega Genesis Mini 2 series. And I grew up playing Shining Force, the Sword of Hagia, on the Game Gear. It's a very similar premise for that. The mainline Shining Force games are all top-down, grid-based tactical RPGs with individual RPG battles for anytime you encounter someone. Like you have like, I guess it's more of a presentational thing, but rather than just being like, these two are here, you cast fire and it does a thing, and then whatever, it actually pulls you into what looks like a traditional like RPG type battle, which I think is kind of neat. They have some really good art for that. I played it for like half an hour. It was a good time. I would love to get into Shining Force more down the line, but it was a short kind of thing there, and it was what wrapped up the series, but it was a pretty cool time. So Blue Sphere versus Shining Force 2. After that, we have Mega Man 2.5D versus Hellfire. Mega Man 2.5D is a fan game that was made with the premise of essentially just like recreating a handful of Mega Man levels from the NES era, but doing it in 2.5D, which isn't exactly what they did, to be fair. Essentially, they just like kind of had these levels, but they bent around corners and stuff. It's technically 2.5D. It's a cute presentation. I think a bunch of the levels got edited so that you could have that effect to a greater degree. There was 2-player simultaneous co-op in there. It was kind of neat. We played a handful of the stages from an incomplete version of the game a while back. We will probably be coming back to it actually at some point now that it's been all these years, but interesting sort of presentation for that. The other game we have is Hellfire, which is for the Sega Genesis Mini 2 series. This, like the entire Genesis Mini 2 is in this heat. It's kind of crazy, but I guess it's not true. It's going to be in Heat 4 as well. You're going to hear a lot about them, but Hellfire is another side-scrolling shoot-'em-up. This one's a much more abstract sort of one. There's a lot of very weird enemies that don't make a lot of like literal sense, if that makes any sense. But interesting way to present that. It was fun. I think I did that one solo, but I'm always a sucker for a good shoot 'em up, so that was a fun time. But again, it's a one-off game. I think Mega Man 2.5D we put like maybe 6 episodes into, so both pretty short, easy enough to check out if you're interested. But Mega Man 2.5D versus Hellfire. After that, we have WWE 2K16 versus Neo City Express. WWE 2K16 formed the bulk of the series that we wound up calling Play-Per-View, which was just at the time, CJ and Felice and I were very into WWE wrestling. I think they still generally are, but I don't know how much they keep up with it these days. I fell off a bit faster there, but we kind of did games in 2K16 to sort of align with like major wrestling events that were going on at the time. So we'd kind of style our matches on that and just kind of dick around. It was a good time, honestly. We had a blast with it. We did our own King of the Ring as like a long running kind of tournament style format, which was a lot of fun. It's pretty good stuff, actually. We never really went back to wrestling after all those years, but if that interests you, then we got a whole bunch of those videos you can check out. There was also Neo City Express, which was the final game of the Ludum Dare portion of Special Delivery, because it was the number one game for that, and it is one where you play as Daggers, who is a delivery boy for Neo City Express. And over time, you're trying to take your company to the top. And so you start taking designer drugs to keep you awake. And then you start falling asleep on the road, and you need to jiggle the mouse. Like you're dodging traffic using the up, down, left, right, the arrow keys. But then you have to use your mouse to jiggle it to keep yourself awake. And you also start responding to text on the road by actually typing on your keyboard, which obviously makes it hard to jiggle the mouse or move up, down, left, right to dodge stuff. And eventually the idea is that you've got so much shit going on that it becomes almost impossible to actually survive on the road. So very interesting and, a clever way of doing the sort of PSA for, don't text and drive and all of that jazz. But really fun game, very tough. But it was very stylized well. There was hilarious writing for it. Definitely check that one out. Definitely check both of these out. But yeah, WWE 2K16 versus Neo City Express. All right, from there we have Mega Man 03 versus Virtua Racing. Mega Man 03 is one that we played for the Mega Let's Play. It is, I think, this is the start of where you encounter Dr. Vile and Omega and all of that stuff. The game definitely is quite difficult. It's funny because the Zero games are so similar in their appearance and execution that it's hard to delineate them from each other. It's a similar problem to the original like classic Mega Man games, to be honest. But it was all of these were honestly a really good time. I have a hard time describing the difference in the Let's Plays themselves because of how similar they were and because we played them all so close together. But I would highly recommend checking it out. The Zero games are fantastic. Virtua Racing is one we played for the Sega Genesis Mini 2. And this one is like such an odd game because you probably played an arcade version of this essentially, where it's like the blocky sort of 3D chunky situation there as you're racing around. But this is like a super rudimentary version of it, like dithered graphics, to, like, it almost looks like a Master System game more than a Genesis game. You're driving around in a little F1 vehicle, doing your thing there. It's an interesting time. There's only one episode for it, so it's easy enough to check out. But yeah, Mega Man 03 versus Virtua Racing. Then we have Sonic the Hedgehog Triple Trouble versus Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe. Triple Trouble is one of my very favorite games from growing up. I love Triple Trouble. Sunset Park Act 3 is one of the best tracks in the entirety of Sonic as a franchise. I love it. And it was great to cover it for the channel. We played it for Supersonic, for the Supersonic Let's Play, as well as Sonic Weekathon 2 for Game Gear. We had, a bunch of us for the first of those, and then Sonic Weekathon's always been kind of just a solo thing for me. Not a very long game, but a very memorable game. Very easy to go and check that one out. Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe is interesting because it is the third time that we played Kirby's Return to Dreamland on the channel. The classic one we played back in 2011, 2012, and then we played it again as part of the Dreamy Let's Play. But this is one that was a remake of Kirby's Return to Dreamland that we played just a couple years ago. And I think it was myself, Sarah, Peter, and Jeff, I think, as the 4 players for that. And it was great for the 4 of us to fuck around with that. There was a lot of... The biggest problem with that game is that Return to Dreamland is a very Kirby-focused game. So if you're playing as someone that's not a Kirby, you're kind of missing out when the game suddenly goes, oh, it's time for Kirby to get a superpower. But a lot of fun, especially in those like weird dark areas where you're racing from like this void oblivion wave coming at you. Very memorable series, in my opinion. These are actually 2 great games to go up against each other. Triple Trouble versus Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe. And finally, we have Sonic 3D Blast versus Granada. Not to be confused with Grenada. It's a different thing. But Granada, so Sonic 3D Blast, isometric Sonic game, platforming. You're trying to collect 5 flickies from each level, bring them to an exit ring or a goal ring, move on to the next stage. Special stages that are kind of different between the 2 versions of it. Some really memorable music. I want to say Richard Jacques was involved with that. Sonic 3D Blast is a game whose soundtrack is so beloved within Sonic Team that they keep finding reasons to bring back music from it for other games. Sonic Adventure uses music from Sonic 3D Blast. Sonic Mania uses music from 3D Blast. I think there was one more, maybe Sonic Shuffle. I don't remember off the top of my head. But it's fun to check that one out. Granada is one that we played as part of the Sega Genesis Mini 2 series. This one's weird. It's like a top-down, and you're playing as like a tank in like a hyper sci-fi kind of scenario. Lots of weird shit going around as you're trying to make your way through. It feels like a scrolling shoot 'em up, but it isn't. It's a very odd little situation there. I would highly recommend checking that one out because it's such a strange one. But Sonic 3D Blast versus Granada. And that is it for Heat 3 of Round 1 of the Grand Champion Tournament. This took a while to put together. A lot's been going on over the last week or two. I'm also in the process of buying a car. There's been a lot going on. I've got a 2-week trip for work that I am leaving for in 8 hours, and I'm recording this and editing it so that it can go up tomorrow. But so there's been a lot happening. I'm so sorry this has come out so late. I apologize hugely for that. But the votes need to be in by Friday, June 26th. So you have only a few days, I'm afraid, and that is on me. We'll see how things go. Maybe that'll get extended, but better to jump on that on the sooner side just in case. I'm going to be recording the next video from another country. Literally each night when I go home from the various events, I'm going to be setting up the camera and just going for it. It won't be as colorful or even probably as crisp as this because I can only pack so much in my luggage, but it'll be a different setup there. So please head to challenge.com/grand_champion_2 to place your votes for the third heat. I understand at this point that because of the way challenge is set up, you can technically also vote for Heat 4. You can vote for all of the ones in the second bracket. I have no control over that, but I'm sticking to how we did this before. The votes will be open for the third set of this through until Friday, and then we will be officially opening the fourth heat, which will go until, I think, July 17th. I think that's everything. Yeah, I think that's everything. I'm just like, it's so late right now, and I'm like trying to make sure that I get this done before I have to leave. And I'm sitting here injured, and it's sleep deprived, and it's a mess. So thank you guys for putting up with all this. These will get faster. A big part of it is also getting the thumbnails together for the stuff that goes on, on either side of me there. But that's getting easier too. So I'm gonna get out of here. Thank you guys so much, and happy voting. We'll see who wins. See you next time.